The chief is going to give us an update on the recent Scrapyard fire that occurred this past Friday. Chief?
Calling the chief.
There he comes.
Our meeting is in session. If you're in the audience, please maintain silence. I hear you all the way up here. Sounds like I'm at church. Chief? You might want to pause just a couple of minutes until we get the cable signal going. We have standing room only. Thank you all for being with us this afternoon. Ron, can you check on the cable? Okay. Joseph, I'm getting the impression it's you giving us trouble.
No, never.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Ms. City Attorney, if the cable doesn't work, okay.
It doesn't matter, I'm just trying to get.
I heard this. Yeah. Good to go, or shall I wait?
So legally, you're okay with me starting?
Yeah, I don't need that. I'm good.
City Legal is going to check and make sure we are recording at this time. And even with no video, if we're recording, the meeting will proceed.
Okay.
Just 1 second, I'm waiting on Leanne to tell me.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Mr. Cook, Jim Davis, Fire Chief. Last Thursday on the 16th.
Jim?
Yes, ma'am.
You have to wait a bit
Oh,
until it's confirmed that
Sorry,
we're
I thought you
recording.
said go.
But you sounded good. That's a great audio check.
Good practice.
That'll work.
I mean,
I see HDMI, no connection. We're good. Okay, and with that, please, Chief, if you would repeat and give us your report. Thank you, Leanne.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Mr. Cook, Jim Davis, Fire Chief. Last Thursday on the 16th at 2:14 in the afternoon, the City of Fort Worth 911 Communications Center received a report of a fire at the 3800 block of North Commerce Street, right there on North Main, that involved the Scrapyard recycling center. The incident lasted a total of approximately 14 hours, and I was asked to come and brief you on some high-level things that went on there for your information. As I said, the call originally came in at 2:14. It took companies approximately 2 minutes to actually get mounted up and get across the street, with the first arriving company arriving at 2:16. The total number of fire apparatus that we ended up using during the course of that event was 48, with a total of 145 firefighters on those apparatus. The vast majority of the fire was contained by about 9 o'clock that evening, and then on a rotational basis through the course of the rest of the evening, they were there monitoring and putting out spot fires, and I'll explain why that occurred in just a second. We used mutual aid assistance from 2 suburban departments that we dispatched for, of Sansom Park and Saginaw, and we thank them for their help. We worked with the water department. As you can imagine, fires like that, there's 3 ways that you mitigate them and put them out. One of them is to cool the fire with water. One of them is to smother it and confine and reduce the oxygen consumption. We use foam to do that. And then we remove the fuel. And that was one of the big problems in this fire, is it was with a recycling center with a lot of auto parts and things like that. There's grease, there's oils, it's a deep-seated fire. So a couple of the different, it's not just as easy as throwing water on it. You have to really get the crane operator, you have to protect them and get them in their machines so they can help pull it apart as well to put it out. So all of those things went into play, and we were using a fair amount of water to try to contain it to the yard, which then Cody and the environmental folks were involved to help us with water monitoring of the water off the facility, to make sure that the air was being monitored because, you know, the smoke conditions in the area. We were in communication with Meacham Airport because it's right by the airport, so the airport put out an advisory to what's called a NOTAM to pilots in the area. We actually had to stretch hose line to make sure we were not operating on the same water lines in the area. So we had to work not just with the water department, but with the police department to make sure that the roads were shut down for hose lines. So there's a huge investment of city resources in a fire like this, and we don't do it alone. I want to thank everybody for their support on that. There were 2 injuries that occurred. One was related to the heat, and one was related to an injury that a part came off of a truck. There was an engine fire on one of the fire apparatus that occurred during the course of it that had to be extinguished. It had no relationship to proximity to the fire. It was a mechanical issue, and we're working with PMD on that. And the facility, there's been, in my 6 years with you all here, there's been 3 fires there. Our fire prevention folks have been working with the code enforcement folks to make sure that that facility is inspected and protected. The last inspection, it really didn't have a whole lot of violations, and by code, they're allowed to stack to 20 feet. So if you think about the 20 feet and then trying to pull it apart, that's one of the challenges that took several hours to contain it. So I spoke about the environmental impacts, I spoke about the smoke, so there was, we worked with the Emergency Operations Center, we advised a shelter in place, but it wasn't like any type of evacuation was needed. It's just more of making sure that folks that have respiratory and breathing problems aren't exposed to that type of environment for the hours that we're operating. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions, but I do want to say that it was a several-hour event that took multiple city departments working in coordination. We're very fortunate for that, and I'm very proud of the cooperation and the work of the Fort Worth Fire Department. So with that, I'll answer questions.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
First, I want to give my thanks to the very heavy response that you had to give and bring to bear on this fire. And I think I missed it, but you said fire departments of Saginaw and what other?
Sampson Park.
Sampson Park.
And there are 2 departments that we have built a relationship we dispatch for.
Good.
They're part of our suburban
I don't know
dispatch.
if any of them are here, but I want to give my thanks, pass that on, please. You touched on this a couple of times, and I know that Cody Wittenberg and his staff are probably looking at it. Were there, the factors that you mentioned that contributed to the fire's intensity and, you know, longevity, were there any other things that you observed that might have been in violation of our city code?
No, I've reviewed the reports. I've spoke with the fire investigators that were on the scene. I've also asked our Fire Prevention Bureau to pull all the records in anticipation of an issue or a concern like that. And we see there's nothing that's been reported to me that the facility has not been cooperative. These appear to be accidental fires that are occurring from metal on metal, causing some type of spark, igniting some type of oil or some type of contaminant, grease that are in some of these. You know, I think the last fire that occurred a couple of years ago was engine blocks. And so, you know, they're heavy. You got to be careful because you put people too close to them, the pile shifts, and next thing you know, you got an engine block off of a car falling at you. So they're really something that what we try to do is work ahead of time, make sure that they're compliant with the height restrictions that we set, make sure that there's operators available to help us pull it apart when it occurs, and then we try to surround it and we try to keep it from extending into causing impact to other areas like neighborhoods, the airport, et cetera. And then we try to drown it, try to suffocate it, and we try to pull it apart.
Yeah, I'd received a number of calls from, concerned residents, to the point about, is there any toxic substances that are combusting that are, circulating in the air? As it turned out, after talking to, the PIO, Craig, he had indicated that no, after doing testing, that wasn't the case, but they were recommending if residents feel more comfortable, they could stay indoors. So appreciation to him. Do you know how many other fires in recent years have occurred at this facility?
This is the third in my 6 years of being here with you, but I don't have a number beyond 6 years, and I can look into that.
Okay. And then I know Chris Harder is here. I do want to mention that there were some pressure problems, I think, in the water system that when you were fighting this fire that you had to contend with. I think the water department stepped in and tried to boost that. I know the tanks were full. Chris, I don't know if you want to get up to the podium and give some clarity there. I think it was on 37th and Grove that there was a water main break. I forget the diameter of the line, Chris, but go ahead and speak to that. I know that y'all did your best and, got that line repaired. I don't think it impacted your firefighting ability too much, so.
Yeah, when we have a fire that, involves multiple engines that is, devoting a lot of resources from the fire department to, what we will do is we will increase our pumping in order to top off the tanks in the pressure plane where the fire is located. And that's what we did here. It's not that the pressure was low, it's just that we tried to provide as much pressure as possible. We did have a main break in the area that was on a 2-inch cast iron, so that's not something that would have impacted the pressures. But what we did is when that crew was done at about like 4:30 with their main break repair, we actually had them stay at the site, because what will often happen, especially in an area that has old cast iron pipe like this area does, is that just the demand in a very, very concentrated area related to the fire demand, it creates a lot of high velocities within the water pipes themselves. And then as fire hydrants are closed and opened and closed, that can create pressure transients, which actually can lead to main breaks. And that's the last thing we want to happen, is to have a main break affecting the ability to fight a fire in the event. So we kept a crew there just in case we had a leak or a main break that needed to be valved off real quickly.
Good measure. And again, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chief.
And our goal, when we teach our people, Chris and his team are really great about helping us understand what size mains are where in the city. And our education, our people, is not to hook up to every hydrant on the same main, because it basically robs Peter to pay Paul. So to what Chris is saying, it's a supply and demand issue, and we try to make sure that we pull off of different mains, and that's where his increasing capacity to the area is incredibly supportive.
And I'll just say that, we do have plans to greatly increase our ability to move water in that area just through a cast iron replacement program. We're going to be taking out some of these old cast iron transmission mains and putting in larger diameter looped system from our Hawley pressure plane. So I don't think that we had any big problems with this fire event, but we're going to be positioned in the next couple of years to be even better.
All right, sounds
And the
good.
city's we're being reevaluated right now for our ISO 1 rating as a city, which reduces people's homeowners insurance, commercial insurance. And Chris and his team are about 40% of that. Fire is about 60% of it. So they assess whether or not the cooperation that you're hearing this morning here, this afternoon here, is actually occurring in this city or not. And I'm very confident that they're going to find that's working well.
Well,
Yeah,
good to know.
and to that point, one of the things we like to do is, if we can actually hydraulically model scenarios as opposed to go out there and flow fire hydrants where there's, lost water, we try to do that in terms of proving our system reliability.
Okay. That's good to know. Thank you both, gentlemen. Again, my thanks, to all the firefighters that responded to this. And I also want to thank MedStar, who was out there keeping them hydrated as well. So,
Correct.
And safe. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next I'm gonna call on our Assistant City Manager, Jessica McAckern, and she's gonna recognize our 2024 Emerging Leaders Class.
There were slides to put up. Go without? It's okay. I'll go without. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The City Manager's team is thrilled to recognize two outstanding groups of employees here today that have completed the requirements to graduate from our Emerging Leaders 1 and Emerging Leaders 2 program. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program, and then I will call up the two groups for us to recognize together. So the Emerging Leaders Program was initially created last year in 2023. It was the brainchild of a young lady named Rebecca Doyle, who's in our Parks and Rec department, but very active in our Young Professionals organization. And Shannon Luce, our training specialist with HR. You can wave real quick. Together, they've reached out to interested young professional members to see what they would like to see with this program. And they developed a curriculum that helped people hone skills such as leadership, collaboration, communication, hiring and managing, building a strong culture, and so much more. In the first year of the Emerging Leaders Program, which was last year, we had 11 employees graduate, and we brought them here last October, so you got to see those 11 graduates last year. The program was so successful, and those employees wanted to continue leading and developing their skills, so they volunteered to continue the program and develop Emerging Leaders too. Those employees then continued their training with the new Emerging Leaders class, but they did so while mentoring those new Emerging Leader participants. We started out the new Emerging Leaders 1 program with 26 employees this year, and we are graduating 19, so we're very proud of them. When we were preparing this, I also found it absolutely exciting that 8 of our inaugural classmates, so 8 of the original 11, have already promoted within the city since participating in the Emerging Leaders 1 program, so just tremendous. This past year, the Emerging Leaders 1 participants and Emerging Leaders 2 mentors attended classes together. They discussed their challenges and their successes, and they jointly developed their skills. Through their efforts, they created a sustainable educational and mentorship program, which is dedicated to the growth and development of the future leaders of the city of Fort Worth. Today, we're going to celebrate 10 Emerging Leader 2 graduates and 19 Emerging Leader 1 graduates. So let me start with the Emerging Leader 2 graduates. If you will come up first and come stand right here, please. And I apologize, we had some slides. I am not proficient at working this, so we're gonna move on. I know we're short on time. But we have a little bit of information to share about each one of these and just the incredible things that they're doing. If you'll indulge me, I'm going to send those to you afterwards because I think it's really neat to see just how much they've grown and all the ways that they're contributing back, both to their departments and to other employees within the organization. So when I call your name, go ahead and raise your hand. And I will note, we did have a few that had scheduling conflicts that are just not able to be here, but I'm still gonna call everybody's names. We have Martha Lee Collins, Rebecca Doyle, Andrew Goodman, Margot Gordon, Tabitha Guess, Timothy Hayden, Daniel Leach, Avery Pesick, and Cody Wittenberg. And Stephen Nichols. Who's in my department. I'm so sorry, Stephen. Clearly, I have an issue with typing as well today. Now, please join me in congratulating all of these employees and their very hard work. Thank you. And afterwards, they're gonna go outside and Shannon's gonna present each one of them a certificate and just a special gift for our appreciation for, again, continuing in the program, helping us develop the program, make it even better, and also mentoring the next group. Thank y'all so much. Okay, while they're stepping off, may I have all of our Emerging Leader 1 graduates come up and join me? All of these employees come from a range of departments within the city, and it's really neat to hear them just when they're collaborating and they're talking, to all share their experiences and brainstorm. I hope they all got as much out of it as we think they did, and we just have such a big group, so it's great. When I call your name, go ahead and raise your hand. Come tight towards me, it'll be good. Okay. Benjamin Thompson, Brandy Kelp, Courtney August, Eric Banley, Fanta Kaba, Heather Berryman, James Garrett, Jordan Balusek, Kayla Scott Cole, Kieran Kandiaru, Crystal Lofton, Lacey Ruiz, Larika Bailey, Lindsay Mesa, Madeline Mackey, Rashad Jackson, Rebecca Wilson, Sandeep Adhikari, and Sherry Mata. Once again, please join me in congratulating these employees. Okay, thank y'all so much. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Great work. Thanks, everybody. Next, I'm going to call on Bansil Sukumbi, our police oversight monitor, to introduce a new member of her team.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to introduce a new member to the OPOM staff. For those of you who knew, when I started the office, we were short 3 staff members, so it's been quite a journey for the last year. But if I can please call up Mr. Eric Sullivan. He is the new Deputy Police Monitor for the Office of Police Oversight Monitor. He comes with us with an extensive background in law enforcement. He started his career around the Ferguson protests. So at night, he was working the protest lines, and during the day, he was taking water and food to those who were fighting for their civil liberties against police brutality. He has over a decade of experience, including being the chief of police for Harris Stowe, the director for campus safety of Williams College, and most recently worked in compliance for the University of North Texas in Denton. So we're thrilled to have him on staff. It has been an amazing first 3 weeks, I would like to say, and I'm excited to see what other perspectives he brings to the office.
I just want to say I am proud of thankful for the opportunity to serve the city, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you so much.
And next, I'm going to call on Fernando Costa to recognize our new Director for Neighborhood Services.
Thank you, David. 3 months ago, we presented Casey Best to you as our interim Neighborhood Services Director. We extolled her many skills that are relevant to the leadership of that department, and we told you that we had high expectations for her performance, and yet she has exceeded those expectations. She has demonstrated that she's the right person at the right time to lead our Neighborhood Services Department. So I'm happy to present to you the permanent Director of Neighborhood Services, Casey Best, who will share with us information about her new management team. Casey.
Thank you, everyone. I am very excited about this opportunity and excited to get to work for the city of Fort Worth. We have a great team. There's a lot to do. We want to make sure we're doing right by our residents, and so we're happy to be here. I do have some new people I want to introduce you to. First, we have our new assistant director that will be starting on September 9th. And that is Michelle Dunekeen. She is going to be over our Community Services Division, replacing what used to be Sonia Singleton's position. Michelle is actually all 3 of us, Michelle and Pamela Rambo Sexton, I found out we are all graduates of UT Austin. And she also has her master's in social work from Howard University. And so Michelle is in the Fort Worth area. She is from ACH Child and Family Services. She's been there for over 20 years and has been doing really good work. And so we're really excited about what she's going to bring to our Community Action Partners team. So Michelle.
Mayor, I've got to say something to Casey. You got too many people for them to all talk.
Okay, well,
So,
just let it smile.
I'm just gonna-
smile and wave.
Let me tell you, when people were told that a current employee from HR was going to be serving as interim for your department's director position, it was like being told the IRS is coming to help you. And you passed muster with me coming into one of my revered projects, immediately being able to answer critical questions and having a sensitivity about time. And I'm talking about ARPA money, possibly going back. And so the idea that you didn't have any need to do a lot of research, you were Johnny on the spot or Jania on the spot, you have won a spot, in my confidence. And so I say to you, congratulations. I know you've got a wonderful team, and we expect great things from you, and I've already seen great things from you. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. And I do want to just real quick introduce two other people. So Pamela Rambo Sexton has been with the City of Fort Worth for over 13 years. She's currently with our Public Events Department. She will be coming over until we can fill, we have a vacant Assistant Director position, and so she will be helping us until we can fill that position. And so we're looking forward to her helping. And then I do want to thank Brian Brown. Brian Brown came over for Transportation and Public Works and was just as lost as I was when we came over. But he has done everything that I've asked of him. And he's been grateful and just Johnny on the spot. He's going to be helping Michelle get situated here. And so we just want to thank Brian before he moves back over to Transportation and Public Works. So thank you all.
That's called hitting the ground running. Good. All right, next we have informal reports. We have a number of those. The first informal report is on the Cowtown Coliseum License Agreement Amendment. And Robert Stearns is available if there are any questions. All right, the second informal report is on the proposed master developer selection for Evans and Rosedale Urban Village. And again, Robert Stearns is available if there's any questions.
Yeah, if Robert can come up and give a quick overview. I thought I saw it.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Robert Stearns, Economic Development. In your packets today is an informal report on the selection of a new master developer for the Evans and Rosedale project. I've probably seen this covered in the media. This is a result of a request for expressions of interest process that we started back in April of this year after moving on from the prior development team. We actually had 11 developers that responded to that request for expressions of interest on the project, which was very, I think, exciting for us to see that level of interest in the project and looking at the opportunities to invest in Southeast Fort Worth. We had a team comprised of city staff, neighborhood partners that reviewed those submissions, and we ended up selecting Royal Capital LLC as the development partner that we'll be working with. Royal Capital is headed up by Kevin Newell. They're actually based in Milwaukee, but they've done some really exciting work up there, and this is part of an effort by Royal Capital to invest over $100 billion across the U.S. So they have a very large expansion plan that they're looking at. Excited about being in Fort Worth. They actually came down to the city before the RFEI was officially released. They heard about the project, came down, visited with the neighborhoods. Since being chosen as the selected development team, they have already begun to engage with Historic Southside Neighborhood Association. They're talking to the Juneteenth Museum. So they are jumping in feet first on moving this project forward. We will have an update to the combined Housing Finance Corporation and Local Development Corporation, which are the primary landowners, at the September 24th meeting. And then following that, we will have a meet and greet with Royal Capital with the neighborhood, kind of an official meet and greet and kickoff for the project. So this will be the first of many steps as we continue to negotiate and structure a deal with them, but look forward to where we are in the project today and hopefully turning dirt on Evans and Rosedale here soon.
Robert, just want to say thank you. I know that Councilmember Nettles has worked really hard along your side too, but I'm just so impressed by your tenacity to get this project done. And I think that we're right where we need to be. So I just wanted to say sincere thank you. And to you and your entire team, rather, and to the neighborhood. I know that you put together a great team of neighborhood-involved folks from D8 and Historic Southside that really feel invested in this. And Councilmember Nettles, I hope that you're happy too. I think that you are with this selection. And I think a year from now, we'll be really turning dirt, which is the goal.
I agree. Thank you, Mayor. You also have been a big support for this district, so I really appreciate you. William Johnson, thank you for making sure that when people came back to the table, they brought things that we needed to see up front. And I appreciate you, David, as well. And you may be gone, but we'll send you pictures.
Invite me to the.
We'll invite you to, because I know you've been working on it for the last 10 years as well.
Yes.
So, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next informal report is an update on fiscal year 2025 proposed budgets for operating PIDs or public improvement districts and our tourism public improvement district. And again, Robert Stearns is available if there are any questions. All right, the next informal report is on historic preservation incentives to support small businesses. And Justin Newhart is available if there are any questions.
My only question for Justin or whoever may handle this is, how are we communicating this opportunity out to small businesses? And if we've developed a communications plan yet using Justin's expertise, who's not wearing a cowboy hat today, I noticed.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think it's good that Justin explained this.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, Justin Newhart, Planning Manager and Development Services. So anytime grant opportunities come up or applications are being accepted, we communicate that to various partner community organizations so they can spread the word to local businesses and property owners. We find that people engage better that way than our office trying to go out and contact every eligible property owner with a designated property. So we really try and partner with our community organizations like Historic Fort Worth, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, near Southside, downtown Fort Worth Inc. to spread the word. Yep.
Any other questions for Justin? Thanks, Justin.
Thank you. Next informal report is on how police calls are prioritized, how many calls go unanswered, and the number of false alarm calls dispatched. And Assistant Chief Aldridge is available if there are any questions.
I think Chief, yeah, Councilmember Beck's got questions, maybe a few others.
I kind of figured that.
I do actually have several questions. Thank you for putting this together. I know when I go to neighborhood meetings, and I know my colleagues here as well, people often complain about why I called and the police didn't come. And I think some of that is managing expectations on the nature of the call and the appropriate level of response, which is in large part why I asked for this.
Sure.
And so you listed out kind of the technical terms or the technical definitions, say priority one, pose an immediate threat to human life. I think I can kind of figure that, deduce what that is. But if you don't mind, for priorities 1, 2, and 3, if you could just give us an example of the type of crime that would be, or the type of call that would be a priority 1 versus 2 or 3.
Absolutely. Robert Aldridge, Executive Assistant Chief. So a priority 1 call would be like an active shooter, a homicide where a suspect is still on scene, things of that nature, something that is actively going down, that somebody's life is in jeopardy. So a priority 2 SS or scene security would be like a major accident on a freeway where MedStar personnel is going to be there, the fire department personnel is going to be there. Or let's say we have a mental health call where MedStar and fire department personnel are there and they like police department being there for security as well. Priority 2 could be a domestic violence incident where maybe the suspect is on scene and maybe the violence isn't actively occurring, but there is a threat of that violence could be occurring, or maybe an assault had occurred and the suspect's somewhere nearby. A priority 3 would be similar, like an assault that does happen, suspect's no longer there, a burglary that occurred that the suspect's no longer there, that doesn't pose any kind of an imminent threat or anything like that.
Okay. And then there's 4 in priority 4 and priority 6. Is
Yeah.
there not a priority 5?
No priority 5, no.
We just skipping
It's just to
it?
throw you off.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love that for us. Okay. So really what I kind of want to focus on is the false alarms for a
Sure.
second.
Yes.
Where do alarm calls fall in that priority 1 through 6-ish?
So it just depends. So regular, let's say it's a panic alarm, that's a priority 1 call.
Okay.
So it's lights and siren, officers are going to show up. Even if the call is canceled, or let's say the homeowner or the business owner says, hey, there's no real emergency, we'll downgrade that to a priority 2. The officers will still respond to make sure everything's okay. If it's a like after hours, or like if it's a commercial holdup alarm, again, priority 1 response. If it's an active after hour alarm where nobody's at the business and it's just a regular run-of-the-mill alarm, that's a priority 2 call. And, it's send up accordingly.
Okay. And do we have, can any type of business in the city of Fort Worth have a panic alarm, or do we have certain criteria for those that are allowed to?
No, if they want to pay the fee and pay the services for that alarm, they can have it.
Okay. So then that's really what I want to get to next. Because first of all, thank you for putting this together. As I went through the data, it's really alarming the number of false alarm calls that our officers are going out to throughout the course of the year. It seems to take up a vast majority, or at least on paper, of our resources. We want people to have alarms, and I want people to know that the police are going to respond to them. But what I would like us to go back and look at is how other cities charge for registration and for those false alarm calls, because it does seem like it's a pretty significant suck on our system right now. And we need to free those officers up to do, pertinent work, not false alarms. I don't know how other cities deal with it, but I'd be interested to know how maybe we can improve that system. One, to be a little more efficient and maybe deter folks to be a little more judicious or have a better set of circumstances around their alarms so that we're not chasing false calls.
So I know that whenever we do have a business that may have a large number of calls, and a large number of calls, not just, 5 to 10, the MPO will go out to that business. They will, even though there are other criteria where they do get fined for that, they do go out there and just let them know that we have had a lot of calls out there to check the sensors, to have maybe the system checked out, to see if we can minimize some of those calls moving forward.
And one last question. When it comes to alarms, where do home security alarms fall within that? Like if an alarm went off at a home, does that have the same priority as that if alarm went off at a...
It does, because home security systems have panic alarms, just like they do have regular, just a regular alarm that goes off. And if it's a panic alarm, again, we will go lights and siren, get there as quick as we can. If it's just a regular basic burglary alarm, unless there's something else to it, it's going to be a priority 2 call.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, no, I'm done. Thank you.
Just a question to that. If police will only go out if the alarm system call and they are registered with the city of Fort Worth,
Yes.
is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So we want to make sure our citizens, if you do have an alarm, make sure you're registered with the city of Fort Worth in order to do. Is it on the website?
It should be, yes.
Okay. So that the police officers will come out. I do have a question. There was an incident, I think it's been about a year ago. There was a resident in Glencrest neighborhood, and they called the police because there was a homeless person laying in their yard and tried to get in their house. The police were called, they was coming, and then it took like an hour for them to get there. So I had called the assistant chief. I think assistant chief helped me out with this. And what happened was Central was on its way out, and then they got maybe a priority 1 call, and they went somewhere else. And so then South Division had to come, which was much farther away to this resident. Is there any, I know I may be asking for a lot, but is there any way, if we know a police officer is going to come, there's a call that we have to reroute an officer, but they are en route to your location?
That'd be very challenging.
Sure.
Because of the number of calls that we get through the call center itself and the number of calls that are dispatched. Because the details of the call change as the call transpires. So the individual that might have been trying to get into the house, I don't know the details of that call. There's a good chance he either walked down the street or he tried to stop getting into the house, which would have downgraded that a little bit. Whereas the response initially probably would have been a priority 1 response, but it probably got, it could have got bumped down depending on his actions. So we don't like to dispatch to other sides of town to come to let's say from south to east to come and take care of that. We'd like to, the divisions to take care of those calls themselves, but depending on what they're on, sometimes that does occur. So, we can look into it to see if we can let them know that there might be a delayed response because we had to dispatch another unit, just so that they're aware of it.
But the system does update when it changes to a different officer.
It does, yeah, it does in the dispatch system.
So if they call 911 again and say nobody is here, it should show up and say, well, we have another officer that's en route.
It would, yes.
Okay.
It would. On the call sheet, it would show that. But like if the dispatcher had to basically reroute and send another officer, the call takers wouldn't know that. They'd have to pull up the call sheet again if the call taker called back in. It's simple to do, and they could let them know that.
All right, thank you.
I have one more, and it's really just a request. We probably don't tell people when they call in, 911, I have an emergency, and we're like, well, you're a priority 2, or you're a priority, we don't communicate that to them. But if there's something that we could do just proactively to just set expectations for residents.
Sure.
And just, maybe it's through social media or some sort of educational campaign, so people kind of understand where, this is how we prioritize calls. And so this is what to expect when you call 911 in the city of Fort Worth. I think
Sure.
that a lot of what the consternation I get is really, I think people just don't understand. They think 911, they think their emergency is everyone else's emergency, and maybe there's not this understanding of there's some more severe emergencies, above them. And so if we can maybe just communicate that in a way that would be effective,
I'd agree.
maybe that helps. I don't know.
It would probably, yeah, it would set the expectation for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. The next informal report is on policy of designated delivery routes for delivery drones. And Roger Venables is available if there's any questions.
Councilor Flores, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No questions. Roger, could you just give us a quick overview of that and flesh out, since I requested this last, you and I have had some conversations about what the IR should show and why that's important.
Yes, sir. Roger Venables, Aviation System Director. So yeah, the purpose of this informal report was really to answer the basic first question about, does this city have any regulatory authority over designated delivery paths for drones? And the simple answer is no. The FAA, through its regulatory authority, has complete and exclusive jurisdiction over the national airspace. Same thing on a state level. The state has also provided some laws to preempt the city from adopting ordinances that are somehow in conflict with the FAA or what the state has adopted. So we're narrowing it down. We're coming down to a local level. And so what does the city have in its capacity to not regulate the airspace, but influence where, for instance, drones take off and land? Their proximity, say these drone nests that we're starting to see now, that we've seen across the country, but now have made their way into Fort Worth as a delivery system for convenience to the customers. Walmart has selected Fort Worth with several sites under evaluation, one of which is currently operating at 8520 North Beach Street, is siting that drone nest, if you will, away from noise-sensitive land uses. I mean, local municipalities are starting to evaluate the location of these drone systems, hours of operation, noise, addressing privacy concerns. And so those ordinances are kind of focused in on that and not so much the delivery path of the drones themselves. So I hope that answers the question. The basic question was, no, we really don't have the regulatory authority to do it, but we have some influence in terms of our local ordinances about how we treat them within commercial districts.
Any other
So-
questions? Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you.
So mine would be because one of these passes directly over some of my residents, and so I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and
Yeah.
saw a state rep try to chime in about this too.
Yeah.
Clearly understanding we have zero regulatory authority over the airspace.
Right.
But one of the things you mentioned that if we can get more information, take back to our residents, which is the noise piece, and we hear about this a lot, the noise
Yes.
ordinance and what's considered reasonable, what's unreasonable, et cetera. Like, is that something that we could address with them? Because some of these houses, and I've listened to the videos, it's all day long, back and forth, just to deliver some cookies. I get it.
Yeah.
So it's a valid concern.
Yes.
So is that something we can tell them, like, hey, like, you can fly, we just can't?
Right, I think you could tell, we can't regulate the airspace. Now, there are no-fly zones, okay, that have been established over, say, critical infrastructure or prisons or schools or those sort of things. They skirt around that, so it's not just basically a direct path. So they've already taken that into consideration. I think it's up to Wing and the communities to understand the operational specifications of the aircraft, just understand what it's capable of doing, the noise profile, right, at these particular sites or around residents. And there's a community outreach program that all the drone operators are obligated to do when they receive their Part 135 air carrier certification, which basically means they can be hired, right, receive compensation for delivery. So they already have an obligation to do that, and it's really working with the community, neighborhood associations, council members, again, to have people have a full awareness of what the operational capabilities of each aircraft are. Right now, Walmart is using Wing at the location of North Beach Street. They will contract with other drone operators that have different operating capabilities than Wing does. So they're all not the same. So I think that's important to have that community outreach piece. And I think we've already started to reach out, and I believe Wing has started to reach out as well, and Zipline will as well, as they start to roll out additional sites and have that community engagement. But yes, to your point, there is certain things that we can do to make sure that those setbacks, right, based on what the noise profile is, that is away from those noise-sensitive uses. Right now, we're treating it really as an accessory use on the retail side, but we also require a site plan. Where are you going to put the outside storage facility where these drones are put up at night? What's the distance from those noise-sensitive land uses?
Any other questions, council? Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
So, Roger, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Wing and the Walmart in question delivers into my district as well as Councilman Lauersdorf. And so we've been getting comments from residents about noise and other issues. I'll say yesterday, Roger and I and others met with Wing and Walmart to get a better understanding of what's going on. Great meeting. Carlos set it up. And we got a lot of good information out of it. As Roger commented a moment ago, Wing has been very agreeable to having discussions with the community and showing the community what their product is, how it works, and how loud it is, and how they get from point A to point B. I think they have a meeting tonight, actually, in your district, Charlie, with the Park Glen Neighborhood Association, and we're looking to set something up in my district as well.
Yeah.
To better inform, and Wing seems to be fully supportive of that.
Yes. Wing is very committed to anywhere where they're going to propose a new location for delivery service, that again, they're working with the council member, working with the community, and that it's going to receive those deliveries, that there is that communication, that people understand what's taking place in terms of these drones.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just one question. Roger, to your knowledge, since more of these uses will become prevalent, that was part of the reason why I was asking specifically, city doesn't issue permits yet for that kind of use, right?
Well, we actually issue, I think there is a process to go through for site plan. LaShonda's here, she can help answer this question, but basically there's an outside storage component that's part of the drone nest, if you will. That requires some type of permit. Also, we've got a electric generator out there, for instance, that help charge the charging stations. That's temporary in nature. So, and again, a site plan to show where they're at. So yes, they go through an approval process to cite the location of the drone nest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next informal report is on Property Management Director recruitment process, and Deanna Giordano is available if there are any questions. All right, the next informal report is on subrogation and collections process for the city of Fort Worth, and once again, Deanna Giordano is available if there are any questions. We're rolling now. Proposed council-initiated zoning changes for property bounded by Clay Mountain Trail, Sandshell Boulevard, Corin Drive, and North Freeway, or Interstate 35, in Council District 4. And LaShondra Stringfellow is available if there are any questions. All good? Then the final informal report is on water utility fiscal year 2025 recommended budget and rates, and Chris Harder is available if there are any questions. Hearing none, Mayor, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, David. Council, any questions on M&C log, members, boards, commissions coming up for next meeting? If not, we're going to move directly into our first presentation, which is by Robert Stearns to discuss the proposed economic development agreement for Westbend Phase II.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. Robert Stearns, Economic Development. We're here to discuss a proposed economic development agreement for the second phase of the Westbend project located off University Drive. So here you can see a map of the overall project. Westbend Phase I is here. Here is the vacant property that is being designated as the Phase 2 location. So this really follows the successful completion of Westbend Phase 1 that was done in 2015. It's currently on the tax rolls for just under $70 million. So again, it's a total of $53 million assessed. Mixed-use development, 265,000 square feet of residential, 4,500 square feet of retail. And that Phase 1 is supported by a 10-year Chapter 380, which provides 50% of the incremental property and sales tax. So we paid about $1.2 million to date, and Phase 1 will be completed by July of 2028. And so here, just a breakdown of the Phase 1 grant payments. So you see as they begin wrapping up the actuals payments, first payment made in 2017. They're averaging a little bit under $200,000 through 2023. And then we're projecting 3 additional years of payment. So again, just under $1.2 million paid to date. Total projected to be about $2 million. So our estimated total for the 10 years of Phase 1 grant payments will be $3.2 million. So the Phase 2 project, here is just kind of a massing of the overall site plan. You can see how the buildings are laid out, interior parking here. And here are just some images of how that would look, really, if you're looking at this site from the Trinity River. Again, some additional renderings. So the proposed Phase 2 is a 7-story mixed-use development. Should have about $65 million in assessed taxable value. An additional 265,000 square feet of total development, 300 units of multifamily, 4,500 square feet of commercial space, essentially facing University Drive. And this project will be engaging the Trinity Trails. And so there's several amenities that they will put in place along about a 28,000 square foot site along the trail, along the Trinity that will activate the trails. So total investment of about just under $82 million. That includes the installation of those amenities and the other improvements on the eastern edge. So that would include sidewalk improvements, bike repair stations, public art, landscaping, outdoor seating, and an enhanced trailhead. The developer is committing to produce this 7-story mixed-use property, again, with the elements that have been previously described, a completion deadline of July 2028. As part of this project, they would also install a vehicular connection from Collinsworth to River One Drive. And then they are going to use commercially reasonable efforts to reframe the Macy's outlet that is currently at the site now that used to be a grocery store. They're going to work to try to bring some type of retail neighborhood market back in that Phase 1 site. And then they will also commit to our standard 15% minimum on business equity firm participation. So our recommended incentives would be to amend the existing 380 agreement. This would provide 10 additional grants. Basically the same terms, 50% of the incremental ad valorem of the property tax and the city's 1-cent sales tax. Again, these Phase 2 grants would be from the new development only, so there won't be any double dipping between Phase 1 and Phase 2. And our total estimated grants for this additional phase of 10 years would be $3 million based on hitting those minimum investment and minimum. And here's just a breakout of kind of the timing of how those grant payments would make. So you see here the Phase 1 grants would end in 2026. We'd have about 2 years of non-payment before the Phase 2 grants begin to materialize, and then those would start approximately in 2029. And again, you see there $3 million over that 10-year period, and that's based on estimated taxable value of just over $65 million and $11 million in annual taxable sales. Here's just a summary of the overall project. Again, I'll note that the grants gross amount just over $3 million. That's about a $1.8 million in net present value. City participation is just over 3%. We have a 27-to-1 private to public ratio, and the net payback for this overall project would be about just over 4 years after the final payment of the grants. So our recommendation will be to amend the existing Economic Development Program Agreement with Fort Worth River Plaza LP, and then we would have an M&C for City Council consideration on the August 27th agenda.
Thank you, Robert. Questions from council? Councilmember Beck?
I don't have any questions, Robert. I just want to thank you and your team for finally getting us across the finish line. It wasn't the easiest project to navigate, and I know it's been a couple of years in the making. But I'm excited that people are going to finally stop complaining about the fence up on University, and we're going to see some great development. So hats off to you and your entire team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I do want to thank Michael Hennig, who did a lot of the heavy lifting on the negotiation of this one.
Robert, I think you get to stay right there. Our next presentation is on a proposed interlocal agreement with the University of Texas at Arlington for the establishment of a new campus development at Walsh Ranch.
All right. So this is another initiative that you've probably read a lot about in the paper over the past week or so. But what was not outlined in some of those articles is that the city has been working with the University of Texas at Arlington for several months now on a way to support the proposed UTA West campus in Western Fort Worth. And I do also want to thank Robert Allen with the Economic Development Partnership, who's been working with us on this as well. I see John Hall with UTA, Vice President of Administrative and Economic Development, and I believe Jeff Jeter may be with him as well. So our representatives from UTA in the House to be here for this presentation. So as y'all are aware, UTA has had a long history in Fort Worth. The UTA Fort Worth Center actually opened back in 2007, but their history extends beyond that. The Advanced Research Institute, UTARI, in East Fort Worth opened actually back in 1986. And they are doing about $16 million annually in research projects just coming out of UTARI. So again, UTA, while they are based a little down the road, eastern in Arlington, they have had a significant presence in Fort Worth for some time. The Fort Worth Center has a number of undergraduate degree programs and graduate degree programs which they support, including MBAs, Master of Social Work, Healthcare Administration, Public Administration, and Engineering. The proposed UTA West campus, which you've heard about, UTA plans to construct a new campus at Walsh Ranch. And it's really broken up into two areas. There's a kind of north and south parcel. The north parcel is going to consist of approximately 5 buildings, 930,000 gross square feet, parking structures, about just over 1,500 spaces, and they would install the associated infrastructure to support the development. The total cost of this parcel, the north parcel, is just over $800 million, and that's going to be a phased-in spending as they develop the overall campus. But this initial phase would potentially open in fall of 2028 with the capacity to support 1,000 students initially, and then grow to serve 5,000 students by 2043. Now, the overall campus, including the north and south parcels, could include up to 9 buildings and enrollment anywhere from 10 to 12,000 students. So again, this is a very significant investment that UTA is making in Fort Worth. And when we were talking in CMO about this campus, I think Dana mentioned maybe we should change our tagline from where the West begins to where education begins. And that's not a bad description of what's been going on in Fort Worth. So if you look at this proposed investment by UTA, what Texas A&M is doing here in the heart of downtown, TCU Medical School on the south side, investments by Texas Wesleyan, HSC, these educational institutions are investing heavily in Fort Worth. And through these partnerships, did I mention Texas Wesleyan? I'll make sure I didn't beat them up. But I forgot to talk to them. Thank you. I know there's one I left off the list there. But these institutions are making a significant investment in Fort Worth. And so, this is not a typical incentive deal that we're talking about. This is not something that we're based on job creation and things like that. But this is an investment in the future of our talent and our workforce. And if you think about this area, and I'll show you the map, here at the intersection of 30 and 20, there's about 13,000 acres of potential development opportunity just at Walsh and Veal Ranch, where this college campus will be situated. And when you think about what that means from the standpoint of being able to attract new investment out in those areas, having a college campus on site where the workforce and talent is being developed is going to be critical for us. So it's not a traditional economic development deal, but thinking long-term and strategically about how the city invests its dollars, I think this is going to pay significant dividends for us when we think about workforce development and talent development. So again, just to orient you to the site I mentioned, it's really at the intersection of I-30 and I-20, really just east of the Cook's Children's Hospital that is there today. Here is a general campus overview, a rendering of how the North Campus and the future South Campus will lay out. And then this is just more of a drill down on the North Campus itself, so you can see the 5 buildings, associated parking, some of the campus nodes, central lawns, et cetera. And then a rendering kind of street level, you can see what those buildings will potentially look like. So what we are proposing is an interlocal agreement to support the overall installation of infrastructure improvements that will support the development of the campus. And so that consists of some of the public utilities and services, water lines, domestic water meters, sanitary sewer. We would also support the construction of an inter-campus road, some lighting, some frontage road approaches, and then the installation of franchise utilities, including electric, gas, and telecom. So again, these are significant costs that UTA is undertaking to have development occur in this area. The university is committing to expend by the completion deadline 50% of those costs with our business equity firms. Walsh is installing Highland Hills Drive, so we have a prior agreement already with Walsh Ranch. So they'll be taking care of Highland Hills Drive along with the water and sewer. And then under this proposed interlocal, the city would provide $2 million to UTA no later than 90 days after execution of the agreement. And then after completion of all the infrastructure improvements, we would provide an additional $2 million as final reimbursement. And these funds are coming from our Economic Development Initiatives Fund, which was established several years ago to do some creative things when it comes to economic development. So we're not asking for an additional burden on the general fund for this particular investment of that $2 million. So our recommendation will be consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of this interlocal agreement, which would allow for the transfer of up to $4 million from the Economic Development Fund. That would go to UTA for their associated infrastructure improvements, and we would have an M&C for council consideration on August 27th.
Councilmember Perkins.
Yeah, until this happens, I could brag that I'm probably the council person who uses UTA facilities more than anybody else. That will change, once we get this campus. But the new president had a bold vision of expanding the presence in Fort Worth, and this certainly is a way to make it happen. And Robert, in case you don't know, because you are much younger than I, UTARI, when it first landed off of Randall Mill, was known as the Robotics Center.
Yes.
And so that made a splash then, but this is a big deal. I just wish it was in D5, but it's close enough.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Crane, you're good.
I missed most of this, working on something else, but appreciate this. I've been briefed on it and excited it's coming to West Fort Worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, we'll move next into our presentation from Animal Care and Control, and we have our new Code Compliance Director, Brian Daughtry, as well as Chris McAllister, our Code Compliance Assistant Director.
I got a dog phone.
How's it going, Mayor and Council? Brian Daughtry, your new Director of Code Compliance. I don't think I knew that. I was seeing if y'all were checking. You're on top of it. I appreciate that. There we go. Yeah, I knew that, but he's on it. He's on it. I was waiting. You guys are on top of it. So yet again, Brian Daughtry, Director of Code Compliance. First work session, actually speaking, pretty excited. I will tell you, back in June, there was a lot of items requested, and there were a lot of issues that they wanted to speak about was related to animals. So we pulled those together, as well as sort of a brief synopsis of kind of everything that animal does, so that while we explain a lot of the details, you kind of have the broader picture and understand everything that's going on in the department. Here's just a few pictures of our fantastic staff and volunteers at our two different shelters, Silcox down at South, as well as our pretty new North Campus. We're going to go over, obviously, the structure of animal services, as well as our core services, digging into staffing and morale, capacity and live release rate. And then we have a lot of new updates of things we changed, a few things on the way, our advisory committee, and we'll dive right into that. Overall, one of the issues that was brought up was sort of best practices, kind of where are we at. There's obviously industry standards that we follow, but more specifically, there's state and federal guidelines that dictate what we have to do as relating to an animal, whether it be euthanasia, quarantining, all those things. And no, we have a ton of best practices, as well as a few innovative life-saving programs, whether it's Pause for Paws, community intake program, which I'll dive a little bit more into, that just recently started, transport program, doggy day camp. Our fosters and volunteers are a huge help. And then the one thing that I really wanted to make sure council understood is that whether it relates to, if you looked at a dozen different animal shelters, they're gonna have different programs than we do, and we're gonna have different programs than they do. However, a lot of them are gonna be the same thing, maybe under a different branding, maybe followed some different guidelines, but I will tell you, we will poach great ideas, and a lot of our ideas have been poached by other cities. That's pretty common. And all I really want you to understand there is there's an effort. There is always different ways to get out to the public, different ways to get people involved, different ways to find these pets their homes. And that's really the main effort that all of the staff and animal that goes towards. Real quick, the breakdown of, we have 128 employees. Chris McAllister, fantastic work. He's the assistant director over our animal care and control. And then we have 4 superintendents, 2 at each shelter, with a number of supervisors and technicians, which is a really vital part of the shelter. They really facilitate, they're the oil that makes the engine go. They transport the animals, maintain them, clean the kennels, which is a pretty important role. Not just from a perspective that you want to, if you go to adopt, you want to see a nice clean dog, but from a disease control standpoint. That's one thing I kind of want everyone to have at the top of their mind is that if something happens and disease gets into these shelters, it wreaks havoc in a sense where a lot of animals have to be euthanized, and it also slows down everything we're doing. Not to a stop, but it can. That's happened at other shelters, and it's a very big challenge. So essentially, when you go to a shelter, what's going on there? You know, I'm sure people drive by it and they say, oh, I know what goes on at a shelter. That's where I go to adopt an animal. Well, yes and no. That's one of the things they do. They impound and care for stray animals that come in from the field services, host a ton of adoption events, which we'll get to Mega. That was this weekend, had pretty successful turnout, as well as educating the public on responsible pet ownership. That's a really big deal because that is one of the key factors with mitigating our live release rate is we have to make sure the public knows they need to be vaccinated, they need to be altered. You know, we need to do everything we can so we're not, you know, the pet population isn't outgrowing the capacity of the shelter. We also have a lot of community engagement programs. We also do vaccination, spay, neuter. And then, like I'd said before, monitoring, preventing, and tracking, hopefully reducing zoonotic outbreaks. As far as our field services, this is a pretty big deal because that's the front-facing out in the neighborhoods. More than likely, your average citizen will have seen one of them unless they're frequenting the shelter. I'm not saying a lot of people don't go to the shelter, but I am saying that there's more people calling for a loose dog in their neighborhood, or they're coming by to ask about it, or, hey, they broke through the fence. And so they have fantastic customer service. I'm really proud of all the staff that I've come across. And that's sort of in a no-win situation, because if they're out in your neighborhood, you're either upset that they haven't got the dog, or they're telling you something you have to do with your animal. And I have pets. I'm sure a lot of mayor and council have pets. Those are looked at like family members. So it's not always a pleasant conversation, but they do it really well. And it's a really important that they're out there for the public safety, for animal welfare. They also help with our community outreach, and then emergency response, which is very common as well. You're going to look at a few slides in here that I have never, ever been prouder of. And I say that where I came from a city that I was at for 18 years, and I was over animal as well. I was there for 5 years. And I want to give Chris some serious props, as well as his team. When he took over 2 years ago, just so everyone's on the same page, animal services is a grind. It is a very challenging job to have. And in addition to that, it's to have passion and want to do a good job. It wears on them quite a bit. It's not like any other workforce. And so attrition is pretty high. When Chris took over, he recognized that, and they did a survey. And this was sent out to all of staff. Had about 50 to 60 response, I believe, was around the amount of staff that responded. Didn't make him do it, but it blew me away at the results he was able to get in a few years. If you look at this, how satisfied are you with your work environment? Very satisfied in 2022 is 5%. That was at 39% now. And on the flip side, very dissatisfied was 31%. That's down to 3%. This is a challenge I've dealt with in my career and spent a ridiculous amount of resources in trying to improve. I did not get these results. This is something where I really hope everyone understands the levity of the challenge that job presents and to get these results is nothing short of amazing. There we go. Did I skip one? No. And so the next one was, how would you rate the morale in your workplace? Same thing. Great was 2%, now it's 22%. Poor, 54%, down to 13%. And then this deals directly with attrition, and that comes down to, are you planning on leaving your job? I mean, everybody has feelings about, any number of reasons, whether it be pay or anything else. But no, I'm happy in my position, went from 16 up to 61%. And that just, I can't get the smile off my face about that. And then I'm planning on leaving from 20 down to 8. Now, obviously, we want 100% and 0. So it's always a work in progress, and we recognize that. And it's still, everything's a work in progress. The one thing I've met with a lot of you already is I believe I've told every single one of you, I can't snap my fingers and, oh, we fixed animal. I don't know if you know, but animal's taken care of. There's no more issues. It's always going to take a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it's going to take the entire community. It's not something I can do by myself or Chris and his team. It takes everybody. And so it's always a work in progress. But these 3 slides, like, it blew me away. I'm very, very lucky to inherit a staff at this level. Moving on to the capacity of the shelters, the North Campus, which is fantastic. If you haven't been out there, please visit it. It's awesome. The capacity is 372, and that includes both short and long-term capacity. Our South Shelter, Silcox, is at 638. And so just so you know what short and long-term, that means there's bays open in, our surgery and clinic area, but that's not necessarily something that they're going to be ready to, available to adopt immediately. So there's different time frames on there. And then while Silcox has been awesome, it still serves a great function. It is ending the near of its lifespan. There's been 3 additions. However, when you're adding to it, it's not like you can keep continuity great. If you go down there and it looks like a maze, you're correct. It is in fact a maze. But that's what happens when you're adding to it. So we are working and looking at public and private as far as new facilities and making sure we can get that on the next bond election. Wink, wink, any help would be great. I did that real clearly so y'all can know that I was looking for support. Real quick, just to give you an idea, fantastic North Campus right here. There's different bays, separated kennels, which is great for disease mitigation. Just a top-notch facility, great clinic. And there's a view of the second story there. And here's our Silcox Center. It's great. It's done what it needs to do, but it's also one of those scenarios where we kind of need to see what we're up against. Obviously not great outdoor areas. We're doing what we can on the indoor areas. And I promise you, staff has done everything they can to get it to the highest level that it can operate. But on certain buildings, you just reach the end of that lifespan, and we're getting really close with that one. The live release rate is sort of everything that goes on at the shelter is to get animals to their homes forever. And, obviously the alternative is euthanasia. Nobody wants to hear that. But it is a very large challenge. Here's our live release rate for the past 4 years. We're right at 81%. You can kind of see a sample of all the other cities. I will tell you that in right after COVID, everybody was doing great because everybody wanted an animal. If I'm gonna be home a lot more, I have time and resources to dedicate that. There's since been sort of a snapback, and then you combine that with it when the economy starts to slow and pennies start getting pinched, we will see owner surrenders grow up. We will just see more animals coming into the shelter because people have to make decisions. And sadly, a lot of those is to let their pet go. And so our goal is 90%. I'm never going to say that we can have that and maintain it at all times. I can't predict the animal world. No one can. So there's challenges that we can't always come across. We're at 81 and we're still working. I will tell you this though. Different shelters operate differently. Specifically, Austin announced July 2nd that they closed their doors. They are not taking any more animals. We will not and cannot do that. That is not serving your public. That's not serving the community. That's not really helping anyone, even the pets themselves. So our doors are open. We're always going to take in animals. It's just, there's a lot of hurdles. There's always going to be challenges, but we have a dedicated, passionate staff. I can't thank them enough. And they are always doing everything they can to get these animals to find their home or find rescues or fosters or volunteers or transport. There's so many different avenues that we can have, but it's always going to be a challenge. We're still working at it. 81% is great, but we got to get up over that 90. And just to give you all a little idea, when we say 90 and they call it a no-kill shelter, it's a little bit of a misnomer in a sense that if it is aging or if they're injured or too sick, they still will be euthanized. That's sort of why they have the 90% mark, is there's still going to be some animals that they don't have a choice on. This was started in March, and it's been fantastic. It's a community intake program, meaning that if you're going to own or surrender your animal, well, let's figure out why you're doing that. Don't just come drop your animal off at the shelter, or we're not even there to answer the door. You tie the leash around the door. Just so we're clear, that stuff happens. It's a bummer, but people don't want to feel the guilt. They don't want to have to talk about why they're releasing their animals. Well, when you set it up where they have to schedule it and then we can have discussions, well, why are you dropping her off? Look, times are tough. I don't have any money for food. That's great. We have all the food you can need. We have a ton of food that gets donated to us, and that is a very easy hurdle that we can get over. And so then there's other scenarios, whether it's, do you need some assistance with training? Do you need help with it? What do you need so that we can get you to keep your pet and keep that as a part of your family? And it's been very successful. This was something that also I operated in Arlington, and it was the same scenario. Had a lot of success. Chris and his team have done very well with it. There's always some worries with setting things like this up, like strays would increase. We haven't had any sign of that. And so this has been a pretty successful program that I'm proud of. A lot of requests are about our spay neuter ordinances. They're pretty clear. It's required unless you get an intact pet permit. There's obviously pros and cons to that. There's not a lot of cons really. It's people, even the responsible people that have pets that want to keep it intact. I think I'm a pretty good pet owner. I can tell you at least twice in the past 3 years, they got through a busted fence picket, or one of my kids let the gate open and they got out. When they're out, this may shock you, they're going to find other dogs. And if they are not altered, that is how your pet population grows. And so that's part of it, that we make sure they understand that. And with that, it's a $50 fee. You have to provide, you have to go through a responsible pet ownership class. We also need to make sure that they have a proper enclosure. They can't be transferred, and the fees are non-refundable. One of the things that we've been doing, was already doing when I got here, but I've helped with that, and we're reviewing everything. What can we do to improve this? We have talked about increasing the fee. In a sense that, no, not from any sort of revenue standpoint, but making sure they understand you have to have the animal altered because we have to control this pet population. So that's one of the easier factors. And we have been, I've heard some citizens be critical that, oh, well, whenever you do get a hold of strays, and they're intact, you guys don't do anything. This right here will tell you over the last 3 years, we have 6 times the amount of citations that we used to write. So I promise you, when it comes to that side of it, we are taking efforts to make sure that the citizens know, no, you need your pet altered, or you can't let it get loose, and we're writing citations. Because while it's a $50 fee, if they come to us proactively, if we find out, well, can we find your animal, it's a $500 fee. And that's really important. We're trying to mitigate everything we can when it comes to the pet population. There have been citizens critical of our assessments as well as our medical records and what we're doing, but I promise you, all the medical records on all the animals are maintained through PetPoint, which is sort of a universal software that every municipality I've dealt with works with. They're all tracked in there, as well as our supervisors and senior staff go through the records quite a bit. And then our controlled substances are regulated by the DEA guidelines, and they're inspected by the state. I promise you all of that is taken care of. And they do a fantastic job, because those are really important things that we need to make sure we're staying on top of. Sent to you guys, we also had the Asilomar assessment. It's quite bigger and color-coded. We sort of summarized it on here, and that's simply, whenever we evaluate an animal, these are the categories that they will fall into. They'll either be healthy, where, we just take care of what we need to, and they're up for adoption. Treatable, and then with I'm going to just stumble all through this, get ready. Rehabilitatable, I did it, we're all cool. And then treatable, manageable, sadly unhealthy, and untreatable. And this is, there's more detail in the attachment that we had as far as the assessment that we do. But I promise you that they go to every length possible, because if they don't do the assessment right, and the dog is just a menace and it bites everybody, if we put that up for adoption, I'm pretty sure that dog's coming back. And so it doesn't help staff at all to not go by these guidelines and make sure that we're putting out pets that can be taken in and can adapt to a new environment and a new family. The Animal Control Advisory Committee is really crucial, and it's often challenging as far as making sure we get everybody showing up and all on the same page. But this is really our connection to the community. Is if there are a lot of issues, if they think that the euthanasia, the live release rate's not where it should be, or we're not doing something correct, this is sort of the mechanism where we connect to them and they find out everything we're doing and everything they do. State law only requires 3 meetings a year. We are going to increase that to 4, so it lines up with our quarters. But I can't rule out if there's any sort of circumstances that come up and the public would like to have more of them, we can shift it. We could shift it to do monthly for a while until anything's mitigated. But I'm never opposed to speaking with any member of our community when there's challenges in the animal world and what we can do, what we have to do by law, and what our challenges are. We all understand that people are very passionate about animals. I have no problem with that. Every person I meet with, I'm like, I love that passion. I love it. Sounds like you want to volunteer at the shelter, or you want to help foster, or you want to be part of a rescue group. Let's channel that, because there's no one on staff that wants, a low live release rate. We all are working towards the same goal. We just got to get everybody on the same page. The volunteers are essential to operations of a shelter. They're giving their time, and they typically account for a number of what would normally be paid full-time positions. At the same time, again, we have to make sure we're in alignment with them. We have to make sure we're all working towards the same goal. So this isn't finished, but we are in the process of a program revamp. We're working with legal. And this is also going to include conduct policy as well as performance expectations. And then also getting them sort of a new uniform, new outfit. And then that matters. They want to see that they're recognized and that they're respected. And we plan on treating them as such. So we really think this is going to help with keeping volunteers, getting more volunteers, and working towards the same goal. Whenever I started, obviously there's always going to be challenges in the animal community, and that includes whether it be on social media, whether that be on our practices, or any number of things. So we are in the process of filling a new communication coordinator position, which is going to help tremendously. But until then, our team has really revamped everything that they're doing when it relates to communications, working closely with Mayor's communication team. And here is a big one that I'm on top of, and this is on the code side of things as well as the animal, and that's we have to track successes and we have to celebrate them. If you're not putting out there all the great things you're doing, you're probably only seeing the negative aspects of animal. And I promise you, there is more than enough awesome stories to go around. Whether we hear about, a family that this turned around, challenges they had with their kids and they bonded over it, or, there's any number of things. And I'm one of those people, just so we're clear, I wasn't raised with dogs. I was raised with a cat. My wife, we adopted a dog. This was prior to me coming here, and it was from the Humane Society. We still adopted. But I had no idea how intelligent, the personality, and the bond you have, where it's like, I have 2 sons, and I joke with my wife, that's the daughter I never had. I love my sweet Nova. She may be staring at some computer screen right now if my wife's watching this. So, but no, I had no idea. And until you really get into that world, a lot of people need to realize that connection you have with animals. And it's an awesome thing. Working with the community is a really big deal. Like I said before, we can't do this alone. We have so many partners: Animal Hope, Cowtown Friends, Dog is My Co-Pilot, Humane Society, Montana Pity Project, Operation Kindness. That's actually one of the facilities that when we were looking for get things on the bond program that we went and toured. That's a picture of. We went and toured their new facility. It was fantastic. There's a lot of great ideas there that we saw as far as getting donations and increasing a number of things we can do better. But I can't thank all those people enough. And I would love to come back and show you a slide, and it's 20 bullet points. We will take any and all the help we can get from the groups in the community. And somebody should have told me in this picture, can we clearly see I wasn't standing with the group? What is this gap here? I was debating just cropping it right out because it looks far better without me in there. More recently, over the weekend, we had our mega adoption event. It was awesome. There was 82 animals that we got adopted out that we brought there. For the event, it was over 700. I appreciate all you guys promoting it. Shout out to Councilmember Crane. We did a FaceTime live video. Hopefully I didn't ruin it or upset any of your constituents. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Went out there, even put my wife to work. We were walking all the dogs we could for a while. It was really successful. But to put things into perspective, so we were able to adopt 82 animals for Saturday and Sunday. That same weekend, we took in 91 at our shelters. So even all of these weeks of preparation, staff did a fantastic job. It was a well-oiled machine. I was there to just not be in the way and try to help. But even with all those resources put in, all those groups together, we had 82 go out. During that, had 91 come in. And that's just that's the way of the animal world, is it takes constant effort when it comes to getting this live release rate down and trying to get all these pets into homes. We have a lot of stuff coming on, new programs, puppy yoga, we're gonna get on board. I had already got a commitment from, I think, everybody at the table, they're gonna participate. David too, you're in on puppy yoga, right? There he is, yes, he's gonna be in on it. No, there's a lot of new programs. One of them that's awesome that we have some staff here I'm gonna give some kudos to here in a second, but Pause for Patriots, that's another program we're starting, and this is awesome. What it is we're gonna combine with veterans and get them into the shelter and get them a lot of on-the-job training with occupational training and stuff where they can build up a resume if they need to get back into the workforce. And it's awesome. I'm really excited. Chris is working hard, and so is his team on that. We're also going to have a kitty hall here fairly soon, and so get ready. There's going to be some cats roaming around. It's fine because we're all taking animals home, right? That's what we were talking about. But no, it's exciting. I'm really the sky is the limit. And the progress that's been made here recently is nothing short of astounding. And real quick, before we have some questions, I wanted to give a shout out to some staff. Carissa Salas, she's been fantastic. She works at our down at Silcox. Enthusiasm, she also fosters kittens. She's doing great. Stand up. What are you doing? Let the people see. Get up there. Get up there. Awesome. Appreciate you. Krista, then we have Krista Wells, and there we go. Really big deal as far as working with our controlled substance is crucial to the success of the North Clinic, and I can't thank her enough. Jeff Jones, Jeff Jones, right there. He's a fantastic North supervisor. He also came up with a great idea that we're implementing, and that's going to be a coloring book for kids. And that is really important because information is key. And if you start kids at a younger age respecting and understanding and being a responsible pet owner, that's just going to turn into ideally what we need with responsible pet owners overall. And then we got Anastasia. She's got Corn Nugget. If you haven't seen, that's it. And Anastasia is fantastic. I bothered her the whole weekend and she was super helpful, but she is a rock star and sort of organizes pretty much everything. If you have an animal question, she will know it, I promise you. And then we got Megan Battelle. There you are, our thing, there we go. But no, she's a supervisor on our Outmount team, and she also came up with the idea for Pause for Patriots, which is awesome. And so that's what I want to get at, where the staff is fantastic, and we're definitely not one of those groups where I'm management, I know all the great ideas. No, it takes all of us, meaning if you have an idea, put it out there. I can't think of something that I've said no to. It's like we need everything and working at it constantly, and I can't be more proud of the team. I was so excited to join the city of Fort Worth and to get this team. Like, I'm not deserving, but I'll take it. It has been nothing short of amazing, and I'm really excited. So with that, any questions you guys have, I'm ready.
Thank you, Brian. Macy, then Charlie, go around the table.
Brian, welcome to Fort Worth. We're so glad to have you.
Excellent.
And you really do have a wonderful team, and I want to thank them for everything that they do. Will you flip back to slide 15 for me?
Yep. Yes.
I'm going to second your comments on the Silcox shelter. It's if y'all have not toured yet, I encourage you to go and then go toward the North Shelter and see what you're missing. But we owe our community better, we owe the animals better, and we owe our employees better. So plug on that. Welcome. Slide 16, please. And I know you touched on it briefly. This is a hard conversation to have. 77 is unacceptable. 81 to me is still unacceptable, but I think we understand that there's some manipulation of numbers. As you mentioned, Austin shelters shut down intake, probably for lots of reasons, but they can also control their live release numbers too. So will you touch on that just a little bit?
Yes, there's a number of ways that sort of you can track your numbers where if that's how those organizations want to do it, that's fine. When I was in Arlington and also when we're here, I'm a big person where if you want to drill into our numbers, let's drill as deep as you want to go. We are not going to lie about anything. We're not going to, sort of do a shell game when it comes to what we're doing with animals. You can't improve your live release rate and serve the community property unless everything's transparent. And we can stand behind that 81%. I'm not going to speak on any other side of town and any other communities, but no, obviously when you close your doors and you stop your intake, if we stopped intake, I would have no problem at a 90% live release rate. I promise you that. On the flip side, y'all would probably have an issue with some stray animals. You would probably have a lot more bites. You would have a lot of challenges in the community, but no, I won't speak on any other organization, but I will say everything I've seen, we can stand behind our numbers, and 81% is true. You're exactly right. It's not where it needs to be. It's a work in progress, and we're always going to be getting to that 90 and higher. But I do trust in all of our data.
And slide 20, the citation fees.
Mhm.
And so obviously there's an increase in citations, which means there's an increase in the animal population. And some of our community doesn't respond to citations, and specifically the homeless or those that are transient. Will you talk about what the shelter does to address those where this is not effective?
Yes, yes. You hit the nail on the head. It's not uncommon that you see homeless with pets. I will tell you, I've been at more homeless encampments than I can remember. I will tell you, by and large, they will take care of those animals better than they are taking care of themselves. We do often get concerns out there, but they will have food and water, but they won't be altered or chipped or vaccinated. So we do offer a number of services because writing a citation to them is not going to help the situation. So we will offer different scenarios where we can get it vaccinated as well as altered, even have a couple times a year we'll have a vet that we can get that will go out there to help them as well. And we are looking at some programs where whether it comes to there was a dog bite and quarantine standards by state law that they can't really take care of because you have to home quarantine, and that's their current biggest challenge. So we are working on a couple of different programs to assist them, whether it be helping out with spots at the shelter for the quarantining or ways that we can get around that, where as long as they're taking care of their pets, we're going to do all we can so they don't lose the animal, but it's also, it's in the best shape, and same thing for the city. But yeah, we are working, right now, we definitely go out and address it and offer free vaccination and altering them. But then there are a couple different programs that we're looking to roll out.
That's great. And then slide 23, our animal control advisory. This is actually a question for council, and I think this is an opportunity for us to have a more robust approach on how we address animal welfare in the city. Right now, we have 7 members. I don't know how these members got decided, but I'd love to see us move to maybe a council appointments. And we can pull people from the community that represent our district, that are passionate about animals. But I do believe we still need to have a licensed veterinarian on that board to help provide medical advice.
Yeah. By state law, we have to have at least one as a licensed vet and at least one as a municipal official. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. If you guys want to make changes, this is the forum.
Okay. 25 on your
You're gaining some
communication
interest
revamp.
in that, Councilmember Beck, and is that a yes to her?
Sorry, I have like 2 more things.
No,
Okay.
I think there's good, that's a great idea, Councilmember Hill.
Okay, communication, kudos to y'all. This is way more positive and happy, and I feel like we're putting out the message out there, so just wanted to reiterate that. And then, okay, working with the community. We have some really great partners out there. I think there's also an opportunity for us to engage the community even more. A lot of people don't know what to do, and they don't know what organizations to plug into. I would love to see a 501c3 public charity support organization that's a part of the city of Fort Worth, and so would love to have a conversation with the city attorney's office too on how that would work, and if that's something we could do where the community could provide charitable contributions to help support you and fill in the gaps. And my next question for you is, where are the gaps? I know we've looked at the budget and we're going to be going through that process now. Are there things that are not included that are kind of on your wish list that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, we submitted a lot of budget proposals, and I realized that, we're not the only department in the city. So obviously you have to take all that into account. And yeah, there's a couple of events teams that would help facilitate getting out into the communities, as well as our temp labor that was on there. That's something that's pretty vital. And I only bring that up for 2 reasons. It keeps the stable or the shelters running, but more importantly, it works with the Presbyterian Night Shelter and Goodwill. Mm-hmm. So it's twofold in a sense that it helps the challenged community that we previously spoke about get into the workforce and also be productive helping the shelters. So, but yeah, there's a number of budget proposals submitted that I can get you more information on, but I think they were on there. I could go through the entire list, but yeah.
Yeah, if you could follow up with that, that'd be great.
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Larsdorf.
Yeah, so what I will always defer to Macy when it comes to all this stuff. So if you make her happy, then I'm happy on these things. So she will definitely be the this committee she just invented. It's chair. I support it completely. Pause for Patriots. Super excited about that too. Let me know how I may be able to get involved and help out however I can. And I'm sure Joaquin's already involved in that too. So just want to make sure he's involved.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Chris McAllister, you talked about how he's an absolute rock star. It's no secret, he's also a United States Marine. Just saying, it's no coincidence there. And to just keep doing what you're doing as far as the community outreach, and you'll continue to get those nasty emails, just like we get those nasty emails, and just like those idiotic, dumb First Amendment auditors that are out there. I ignore them. You keep doing what you're doing. Just keep up the good work and keep moving that needle to the right, and you'll always have my support in that regard. So just keep up the good work.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilmember Bivens.
I'm with the Marine. I ignore them too. So for all of you who send copy and paste emails, they're not resonating with me. Macy, I love the idea of having a different approach to the board. When I first got on the council, I thought one of my neighbors had been appointed by my predecessor, but that process was completely different. So it would be good to have council-appointed representation. I need to ask you for a report, but you can't tell me now. I mean, I don't want it to be future. I want to know where the cases of animal cruelty are occurring per district.
Okay.
And I have an idea that I shared with the Moncriefs early on when they donated the money for the medical wing in that Silcox Center. And the idea is to expose children in the neighborhoods by way of their schools where you find this cruelty occurring. So at some point, I'd like to know that.
Okay, for sure.
That's it.
Councilmember Beck. I just have one suggestion. I know we talked about it, and I didn't see it on the list of upcoming programs, but the hiking with homeless dogs. If we could look at getting people to some of our parks facilities. We have Tanny Hills, we have the Nature Center. So I think it does two things. It gets residents out, but then it lets us take a dog from the shelter and get them out for a couple hours.
Yeah, there's been a couple iterations, whether it be a Doggy Day Out program, which we briefly talked about, and that's also kind of similar to the Fort Wolf Runners Club, just so we see what we did there? See how creative? That's awesome. I definitely didn't mess it up several times prior to this. But yes, agree. We definitely, I'm all for any additional programs, and yeah, and I'm all for getting everyone in council involved. So I promise we will keep you in the loop on any one of these, whether it's going for a hike with a dog or, doing whatever you need to get the awareness out for these animals and let them find their homes.
Councilmember Crane.
Yep. Brian, thank you. You're doing awesome work. It was great to meet your wife this weekend as part of that, so I can tell this is an all-in family affair. Important question, is Corn Nugget up for adoption?
I believe there's an adopter lined up. We're also teetering with a department mascot for him, so, yes, but it's...
Well, there may be a backup contract with Val over here, so just...
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you again for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Hey, Brian, it's been great working with you, just briefly, and I look forward to getting to know you a little better and working with you. Chris has been awesome. Thank you so much for all your help that you've provided throughout the past year. My question is, I have a constituent who is at his max 3 dogs, so the dogs had puppies, but they're not planning on keeping those puppies. Would he still require to get that multi-pet permit?
I need to review as far as when they have a litter, because I know there's a time frame. No? I can answer that. Yes. Head up here. Head up here.
No, he's not keeping the puppies. He's a breeder.
He can keep the puppies up to 4 months, but after that.
4 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
For some reason, I was thinking 8 weeks, but that was something else. Yeah.
Any other questions, Council? Yes, Councilmember Flores.
Ryan, thanks again for your presentation. Great enthusiasm. I told you that before, so you're infectious in that way, in my opinion, but that's a good thing. I once served on the Animal Advisory Committee once upon a time, so I got to see it from a different perspective. You know that I have 2 shelter dogs as well and fostered before. My questions are this. Having been at the Chuck Silcox Center various times, in talking with staff, I know that there's a challenge to find additional space. In recent years, when Brandon Bennett was here, he and I had a chat about that, how they were able to expand to get some usable space outside where the trucks queue up, where they come in to clean up, restock, and get ready to go out there. The impression I got at the time is they're limited, but you need more usable space. Are you going to be looking at that kind of facilities assessment?
Yes, yes, and at the time, that was probably accurate, but on average, our intake goes up about 5% a year. And we're gonna be planning for tomorrow, even when that's put on the bond package, hopefully, and if it gets approved, we're gonna be chasing that almost constantly, but yeah, unless we can really get into the community and reduce the intake, capacity is always gonna be an issue. I will tell you, there is additional space that to put it in building terms, we've kind of built out that facility as far as we can to keep it with our standard of care for animals. We're not warehousing animals. That's a challenge that a lot of shelters I've come across. And that's a problem because you can get your live release right there, but you're bringing down the care of all of those animals, which makes disease outbreaks worse. You're not doing proper assessments. It's a nightmare, honestly. So that's our biggest hurdle, is making sure that they get the proper care with the capacity that we have, while also trying to get above 90% live release rate. It's sort of one of those things where it's like you can exercise, you can have fun, and you can sleep, but they're like, you can only do 2 of those 3 because of time.
Yeah.
So it's very similar in the animal world, but we're trying to get all 3 done.
Okay. Do you have any pet ownership statistics, specifically like, per capita? You had a slide there where you showed the various cities. If you don't, might be helpful, at some future time, well, you might have that. Because, I think that goes into describing what your live, release rates are about.
Yeah, it gets a little tricky. We could definitely go as far as our adoptions and just do it based off the population per capita. It sounds like kind of that's what you're asking
Yeah,
for?
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
we can get that info.
All right. Last question. I heard that there's a new feature on microchips for pets. Is there some kind of new tech that's been added to them?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, just get back to me, separately
Okay.
on that, because I thought I'd heard that, so. All right, that's it. That's all we got.
Any other questions? Are we good? Councilmember Martinez.
Oh, I just wanted to second Macy's request to fund the Silcox Center in the upcoming bond.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you for all the meetings we've had since the first day you got here. Y'all are doing a fantastic job. I think the other thing you've done is pick a lot of attention on what it looks like to bring positive awareness to the needs of the shelter, specifically the code red list that used to exist. That wasn't really productive in the community, and y'all recognize that. Our goal is to make sure we are honoring the pets that we do have and also mitigating any disease, and you've had to work through that as well. The other thing I'd just make this council aware of that's a problem that really animal care and control has across the state of Texas is attracting vets to the practice in a public sector environment because it's so competitive. We have such a shortage of vets. So I don't have a solution to that problem, but it may be something we need to address in the next legislative session because it is a significant issue. You just cannot attract them. They can make more money in the private sector. It's just that simple. So looks like in this budget, we're focused on 2 part-time vets. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that may have been something that we're changing because we
Okay.
have a hopeful full-time vet that
Excellent.
we may be filling. Yeah, so.
We all need to make phone calls to welcome them, and we'll do that. Yeah.
Yes. I will do everything I can. And you're 100% correct. Prior to me leaving Arlington, it was 5 years without one and doing everything possible to try to get it. And then we came here and Chris and I have been talking about it at length, and it's a huge challenge. But I'm all for any and all new ways to get one in here, as many as we can in here. So,
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate
excellent. Thank you.
it. Okay, Counselor, next up, I believe, is Assistant City Manager William Johnson to give a presentation on police meet and confer.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. William Johnson, Assistant City Manager. We're going to give you a very high-level overview of kind of the status of our meet and confer ongoing discussions with the Police Officers Association. We started negotiations last year in November. Today, we're here to give you kind of an overview for consideration of future, in consideration of the future 2025 budget process. We're hopeful that next month, if not in the next couple of weeks, at least by next month, we'll be concluded with negotiations, and that the POA will then be in a position to present what we've discussed to their membership for a vote. Assuming that that gets ratified, we're trying to have something in front of council by September 17th in time for consideration along with the budget and any necessary M&Cs that would be necessary at that time. In the absence of that, this current contract will expire on September 30th, and we would go into an evergreen period in which all terms and conditions of the agreement would be frozen and until a new agreement would be put in place. In our meeting, we kind of laid out some ground rules that team members would be respectful and solutions-oriented as we exchanged ideas and discussed different aspects of the contract. It's also understood that all of the tentative agreements are subject to a final agreement being reached, so nothing is final until everything is agreed to. And the POA has had an opportunity to ratify the agreement, and the city council has voted to approve the contract. This may be kind of small, but it kind of talks about a number of articles that have been put on the table. Many of them we've reached tentative agreements on. There are some that are still outstanding. I call your attention to the right side of the screen, where we talk about definitions, which is just a cleanup item that will be done once we're done with most of the major negotiations for consistency. Time off for association business is something that's currently under discussion. We think that we may be able to reach some level of agreement on that item. Disciplinary action, Article 7, we'll get into a little bit more detail on, but we've made a lot of movement and a lot of progress in terms of tentative agreements, and those discussions are ongoing. I think we're getting really close. On hiring for beginning positions in the Fort Worth Police Department is also a topic that's currently under discussion. Deanna and her team have been actively working as part of our group as we talk about some of our challenges with hiring. And civilianization of certain positions. We provided some detail on certain positions that may be being performed by a sworn officer that may not necessarily need to be performed by a sworn officer. But if those positions were civilianized, it would still not reduce our overall strength of police officers. So that would be done without reducing our police officers' strength. Some of the key initiatives that have been proposed, Article 7, we propose to shorten the time to conduct hearings of disciplinary appeals. We think that we're close on that. I think we've come down on the amount of time that it takes to do that from a number of months, an extensive number of months, to about 120 days. We reduced or increased the age of a police officer, so if someone is transferring in from another place and they're an officer, or they want to go into the academy and they're an officer, they can do that up to the age of 50, right? As opposed to 45, which kind of broadens our pool to recruit from. Our promotion criteria, we reduced from 4 years to 3 years for the corporal position. On the other side of this chart, you'll see POA had proposed promotion criteria reduced from 3 years to 2 years for sergeants, lieutenants, and captains. So all of those positions and the corporal will be able to promote 1 year sooner than they currently can under the existing contract. And I won't go through every single one of these, but we are looking at a 4-year contract. The meet and confer agreement, if approved, the new one would expire on September 30th, 2028, or go into a 1-year evergreen period, which we would always like to avoid if we can. looking at kind of some of the historical things, I will go back and say that we do market surveys. Our HR team has a number of cities that we go to, we conduct surveys to collect data, and we use that data to kind of structure and inform us about some of the goals and objectives each time we go through this process. And what we've done here is we provided historical data that where it shows that back in 2009, this over 4 contract cycles, in 2009, the blue line shows that the city of Fort Worth's wages were above the market median and market averages, right? So through that first contract in 2009 to 2012, to 2016, et cetera, we stayed above the market. But if you look out into 2022, 2023, the current contract, you can see the point all the way out here on the far right where our wage rate went below the market median and market average. Right now, we think we're about 13 plus or minus % below that market median and market average. And I point that out because in the prior contracts, it was a much easier process. All we really had to do was look at an across-the-board number that we would provide to everyone. This time, we have to look at how we fix some things that are going, where we have people on the early in their careers, they're well below the market median, what things we need to do to be able to attract and retain talent and get a bigger pool and a better pool, better quality pool into our academy to become police officers here in Fort Worth. So nationally, the labor market has become very competitive. Most cities, a lot of cities in Texas don't have contracts. So if the market starts to move over a 4-year period, they can just change what they're paying police officers year over year. We are more locked into a contract. We have the ability to go back and open that contract if there's an exceptional economic event or something like that that happens by mutual agreement. But in general, we're locked into that contract for a 4-year period. And during this current agreement, as I just mentioned, we saw not only our labor rates go below the market median, but we also saw that the time that it takes for an officer to reach max salary and or their lifetime earnings over their work lifetime, we fell behind. We fell behind the market. So we wanted to try to correct those things as much as we could in this current contract. As a result, we made a counter proposal, and this is what we've currently placed on the table to the POA. For steps 1 through 4, as of 10/24 year 1, we would see a 12% increase. For steps 5 through 8, we proposed a 10% increase. We proposed to eliminate step number 9, which would increase or reduce the time that it takes for our employees to reach that maximum salary level and increase their lifetime earnings. And in addition to that, anyone beyond step 9 would receive a 5% increase in year 1. In years 2, 3, and 4, we proposed a 3% increase across the board. A lot of these, I'm putting these out there as proposals because we're still in negotiations and discussion. This chart shows on this red line the market median compared to other cities around the state. The blue line at the bottom shows where the city of Fort Worth's pay rates compare, how they compare to market median today. And that green line in the middle shows based on the proposals that we have on the table, how much closer we're gonna move to that market median for our employees going forward. You'll also notice there's an area where, in the market median, the red line, where it kind of flattens out. That's that max salary that we referred to a little bit earlier. Now our green line, the new proposal would get our employees up to that max salary about 2.5 years earlier. Right now, it takes about 16 years. Under this new proposal, it's gonna be between 13 and 14 years to hit that max salary. So in essence, we think that while there's more work to be done, this proposal will make a big difference. It moves us a great deal back in the right direction. We're hopeful that we'll be able to continue our discussions with the POA, our partners in this effort, and provide some relief for everyone who is represented under the contract. Our next steps, we have another negotiation session coming up this week on August 22nd over at the new City Hall. Once we've reached agreement on all the outstanding terms, the POA will be able to present this to the membership. They'll take a vote and hopefully be able to have this ratified by a majority vote before we come back to council in September on the 17th for council approval, along with any other necessary ordinances needed to ratify the contract. With that, I'll address any questions you might have.
Thank you, William. Questions from council? Councilmember Nettles?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple questions, and I didn't see another slide. So the slide that proposed the 10 to 12% increase. Do we know, even in the last meeting confer, or when we have increased officers' pay increase, what percentage have we done in the past?
The last agreement, the increase was an average of 3% across the board. But I'll remind you that going into the last agreement, our current wage rate was above the market median and the market average. So this time we had to be a lot more creative and take a look at how we make adjustments for the changes that have occurred since the signing of the last contract over the past 4 years.
Okay. Are there any other departments within our organization who have also received a 10 to 12% increase?
What our HR department does, yes. Our HR department looks at job categories and classifications, and where there are, for lack of a better, where there's a need for a market adjustment, they have made those adjustments. We can come back to you with specifics on examples of where we've done that, but what comes to mind all the time are our engineers. They're very difficult to fill positions, and we've had to do some things to make it more attractive to fill a lot of those positions, as well as the Development Services Department.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to see that slide added in here, and actually you guys come back prior to us going to an MNC so that residents could see the comparison of other departments, as well as I don't see the slide that talks about the price is gonna cost our taxpayer dollars, or what's gonna come out of our budget. So the next time we come back, can we have a slide that reveals the budget impacts that the city of Fort Worth would take, be it CCPD and general funds?
We will. It'll probably be an appropriate time to do that because hopefully at that point we will have finalized our discussions with the POA and have a number that we can bring forward.
also, with the 10 and 12% increase, will they also receive a merit in the spring?
The contract would say, okay, in year one,
Yep.
the negotiated increases are what they receive in year one. Each subsequent year would be an across-the-board increase, and what's on the table now is for year two, year three, and year four, each of those 3 years to be 3%, which is fairly consistent with what we do with all of our other employees.
Okay, those questions I have right now.
This question may be for Deanna. Some of those positions that Councilmember Nettles was talking about, those are, aside from engineer, can you name a few others that have required such a large raise?
Yeah, so we actually looked at, you might have heard me speak about hard-to-fill positions. So those were everything from CDL drivers to engineers to customer service reps. They're across all departments. And so one of the adjustments that were made, in addition to pay for performance, which ranged from 0 to 7%, they received an added increase of 3 and 4%, depending on their performance evaluations. But we identified classifications that were hard to recruit. And then we've made design changes at the department level. So the Water Utility Development Services Department, we've worked with TPW to just look at their whole classification systems, to look at how we can make modifications to pay, and that occurred over the last 2 years. It was just kind of coming out of that COVID environment where we're really looking at the population of people to attract to the organizations was reduced, became a much more competitive environment. So we were really working hard to keep our talent in the organization.
Okay, so hard to fill, critical to City of Fort Worth. And
Yes.
any of those other positions other than perhaps fire and even code in some cases, any of those ever required to kind of put their life on the line at all? Or no?
Well, the public safety is very different than those
That's what I thought.
environments. And the pay system's different as well.
Thank you, William. I had a couple questions. Again, Deanna, you may want to stay up there. The number of vacancies that we have in the police, is that the largest department? I guess the department that has the largest amount of vacancies in the city of Fort Worth?
Yes, it's one of the largest departments, so their vacancy's going to mirror and be comparative to their size.
Okay. Will you go to slide, I think it's 6?
This one?
Sure, that'll work. Just for point of clarification, the dollar amount associated with market rate, is that wages taken home? Does that include a benefits package, or is that separate?
That's base wages. And so when we look at the market averages, the best way that we can do that is just base wages.
Okay.
There might be some incentives or certification pays that differ across agencies, so we look at base wages.
Okay, and then obviously, if we're paying market rate or more competitive, as close as we can get, we're going to be able to fill those vacancies faster.
Absolutely, especially in the metro area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one request, the compression costs. Are we fixing compression costs here across the entire department, or is there a certain position level in which we stopped at?
Yes, we ran into, anytime we start making these adjustments, we run into compression issues. And so when we make a proposal and we look at what it's gonna cost the contract, we have to adjust across all steps and all classifications or categories, if you will, to deal with compression. One of the things that we also found is that where we were eliminating a step, it also helped to solve certain compression issues as well. So yeah, we are addressing compression as we deal with this.
Okay, great. I would like a budget response just to better understand how much that compression dollar amount is in relation to the overall package.
Okay.
And then just to follow up, just commentary, I really commend y'all for the way that y'all were able to address the need for adjusting our officers' wages and also addressing compression at the same time. I mean, I think there's a lot in this strategy that we could apply to though, wage salary or the minimum wage conversation that we've been having separate of this in the budget talk. So I would really like us to take a lot of these things. For example, I know it's hard to find apples to apples with base pay, but we use base pay here and we didn't use base pay in the minimum wage conversation. So there's a lot of great things that we did here that I think we could apply to that and look forward to doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Council, that's the last of our formal presentations. Do we have any future agenda item requests? No. Yeah, Councilor Martinez and then Councilor Nettles.
Hi, yes. So last week I noticed that there was a bullet that hit one of my vehicles. And and I know that there have been gunshot detection monitors throughout the city. So I'd like to see an IR on gunshot detection activity and how those hot spots are being addressed.
Yes. I want to get an IR on what we are using in our police department to protect our officers when it comes to car crashes and on the highways. I know that the fire department has that extra piece, the blocker. Yeah. What is it called? Yes. Yeah. So do we have that in our police department? Are we able to put that in and what that looks like?
Thank you. Any other, did you have one, Councilmember?
Yes, I think I've already spoken to Mark and his staff about this, but I'd like an IR that explores the fiscal impacts to the city budget if we were to consider adding Cesar Chavez Day and also include Veterans Day as well separately. I'd like to see what those fiscal impacts are.
Anyone else? No? Meeting is adjourned. Reminder, we do have CCPD immediately following.
All right, it's 5 after 4, and I now call the CCPD meeting for Tuesday, August 20th to order. First order of business is the approval of meeting minutes from May 21st. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
And I have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Seeing none, motion passes. All right, let's see. Any questions on written reports? Going once, going twice, see none. All right, let's keep moving on. All right, we have FY 2024 third quarter performance report on activities and finances. Marion Spencer's available if there are questions. Okay, silence says no. All right. All right, moving on. Okay, Partners of Shared Mission Quarterly Activities Report. Keith is here and he's available for any questions we may have. Are there any questions? Okay, none there. Moving on. Now we're on to discussion action items. Consideration of community-based program funding recommendations for FY 2024. Programs grants in the amount of over $1 million. So Keith, floor is yours. Let's go.
Thank you, President, Board of Directors. This will be our quarterly recommendations from the advisory board. I want to thank our chair who's in attendance from the advisory board for these recommendations and their work going through this. It should be a short presentation, but we'll address any questions as we go along. We'll start off with our program grants. As you may recall, this is our $300,000 three-year grants that we lifted the cap back in February. This is different from our mission partners grants that have a separate cap on them, but these grants that are here are left over from before we lifted the cap, and so that's part of the reason that you see the amounts that you do there. We did have a goal to increase applications. We've been working on that to get more applications in the door. I noted that we had 11 program grants applications in the 24 cycle, and already in the 25 cycle, which started back in March, we have 14 applications, which we're already seeing an increase. The average request increase is up over 300,000, and so we're starting to see some impact of that. Besides these applications, we have 9 other applications in various stages. We'll talk a little bit more about those other applications, but I wanted to go ahead and get into these recommendations. First recommendation is for Campfire First Texas, their collaborative legal advocacy solution program that provides increase to safety, reduced dropout rates, and reduced juvenile crimes by engaging underserved middle school and high school students in positive activities, cultivating a growth mindset, and conflict resolution skills through social emotional curriculum, family engagement, one-on-one mentoring, and college and career readiness. Funding will be used to compensate personnel responsible for programming, supplies, and participant travel. I believe we have Jenny Wester in attendance if there are any questions on this particular application. Moving forward to our second one, Guardian Services, their Victim Services Financial Exploitation Prevention Center program. And this is a financial exploitation program which creates a unified network of partners committed to prevention, protection, and prosecution of financial exploitations of aging and or disabled adults in Fort Worth. The program has served 400 participants in all districts by providing education, outreach, and victim services. Funding will compensate a victim assistance professional, community outreach manager, grant accountant, and a victim assistance intern. I believe we have Lynn Scott in attendance if there are any questions. Moving on to our third program, United Community Centers, their education literacy program. This is a literacy program for family empowerment and building relationships between neighborhood police officers, businesses, and schools. The program will serve low income with ages 4 to 16 at the Wesley and Polytechnic Community Centers in zip code 76106 and 76164. Funding will be used to compensate literacy teachers, bus drivers, and child care assistants. And then Southside Hornets is our fourth recommendation for program grants. Their Unity 360 program aims to combat juvenile delinquency in Southside communities by engaging ages 4 to 12 in sports, education, mentorship, with activities including STEM learning, parental engagement, and sports, all underpinned by their proud values to instill discipline, respect, and community spirit, thereby enhancing safety and reducing crime rates. Funding will be used to compensate a program coordinator, counselor, administrative assistant, and program supplies. And I believe we have Patrick Brown and Latasha Ireland on hand for any questions. Those are our program grant recommendations. Are there any questions on those?
All right, any questions over those recommendations? Chris?
Yes, thank you. So I always ask this question when you bring these slides up. So we have the recommended groups and organizations to receive funding. Are there any groups that did not receive any funding?
We had, let me pull
And I know this is the balance of what was left over. Is that correct? You mentioned at the beginning.
So we still have a balance,
Okay, sure.
which we'll address here in a moment.
Okay.
Currently, let's see here. We have in your report, there's a report in your packet, we had 5 declined concept papers, and those agencies have been contacted with their feedback. Our Community Partnership Command also reaches out to them to make sure they don't have any questions. They can immediately begin preparing to resubmit. They have to wait 120 days to submit, but they can immediately begin preparing. And among those, 3 out of the 5 agencies I'm reporting didn't use their grant navigator. Our grant navigator has been a big part of the program, has been very helpful, and so we are encouraging agencies to do that. We do train them and provide that information during the required training, RFP training that we do with all the agencies. They're required to attend that training. We talk about the navigator, so we encourage them to do that. And then I just talked with an agency today, encourage them to go and use the navigator system, our grant navigator through United Way to reapply.
Okay. You said it's in our packet. I'm looking in you got it right there? Okay. I don't have the ones. Okay. So it is good to, I think you said Southside Hornets here. I want to see if they can come up and kind of just talk about what they're doing. Because I think Southside was one of the ones that maybe a couple of years ago that had applied and didn't make it through. And I had asked the question of why. And so it's good today to see that they did make it through this process here.
Yeah, sticking in the process, yeah, you're exactly right. Were they able to stick around and look at my staff?
Yeah, I think.
Patrick Brown and Latasha Ireland from Southside Hornets.
You need to stand here. Now, what was your question?
Just give us an overview of what you guys are going to be doing in the community.
Well, good evening. I'm Dr. Latasha Ireland, and we are actually working with Briscoe Elementary Schools. One of the primary things we're doing. We're also working with community members. And so what we're really trying to do is do a wraparound service. We have been doing free services already in an after-school program. So not only are we working with the youth, we also have a parent, it's called PASS, which is Parent and Student Success Program. And with this PASS program, it's an incentive program. And so what it does is we're trying to increase the engagement and involvement of the parents. So what we do is every time they get involved with the school, they volunteer, they attend stuff, they have a point base where we created an app where they can document their time. And then based off of that time, we give away incentives like a TV, or we do a room makeover, or we do a night out for the parents. And what we're really trying to do is get those parents together. And then also we have the 4 Cs program, which we've talked with the counselor, the coach, the clergyman, and the cop. And our whole concept is to do a wraparound service around that youth as well. And then now we're incorporating meeting with the educators at Briscoe. So now we do another call where we sit with the educators and we give them all this feedback that we're getting from the kids that are at the school, along with the parents, and also getting the feedback for the educators as well. And we're doing that centered around sports. So what we do is do an interactive. They play a sports. We teach them some type of activity. And while they're doing that, we're also assessing their behavior and looking at different skills and competencies, and we're scoring them. So how are they doing in their teamwork? So it's more of an indirect way. Because year before last, we did a Mind Over Guns campaign for ages 4 through 6, and we learned that a lot of times they don't have alternatives to their decision making. And so that's what we wanted to implement within the Briscoe community.
Thank you. And one last question. How old is the Southside Hornets organization as a whole?
I'm 60 and I played for them, so they're at least over 60. Over 60 years.
So this is a good organization. I will tell you, many years ago, I used to coach for the Southside Hornets, and is that the little? No, we actually won. And Elijah Strong, who used to be a district director, was playing. He was like 6 years old, and so this organization has come a long way. So congratulations, glad that you guys have continued to do the work for our community in District 8 and Southside. So thank you so
And if
much.
I could say one other thing, please, if I may.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised here in Fort Worth, graduated from ODY High School, did 20 years in the Air Force, came back to give back to my community. And it's organizations like Southside who's been in the community for 40 years. And when we introduce what they're doing now, it's almost like, well, when did they start doing it? They've been doing it. Only difference is they didn't have the exposure, and that's what I've been doing to make sure that they get that exposure. So I am very proud of Southside to be able to get this grant with the CCPD.
Thank you for your service too.
I think, Gina, did you have a question on this topic? Go ahead.
Not for the Hornets, but thank you for what you've done. What I want to talk about is the training, and you've enhanced the training in terms of information. You know, for years I've seen this be an issue, and I want to commend you on making it happen. What I'm concerned about is there are some people who, for whatever reason, can't get the information to know about the navigator and to know about what's available, at United Way. I looked at each of those who received the decline ruling, for CCPD funding, and just looking at their websites, it was pretty clear why the decline came through. And so for the sake of those people who want to do good, do well, serve the community, can you talk about how they can learn the application process? We know it here, but just because you're at that microphone, and hopefully somebody will hear it. I think it's being recorded.
Absolutely. It can be an intimidating process. And so we've added over the years, with the help of this group, some helps along the way, both in person. The navigator is an in-person that can work hands-on on application. But we've always had the RFP training where we meet in person with an agency. It's a required training. We asked that it be required, so we make sure that everybody has the same information, that nobody's missing anything. And so we have the RFP training, we have the grant navigator, and then we've also added professional grant training. And so CCPD is helping to cover that as well. And so we work with a professional grant trainer, the program that we use as somewhat of the basis for how we structure our application. So you're getting it from about 3 different directions, plus the staff who's there to answer the questions as well. And so if you don't know about the Grant Navigator, reach out to the Partners of Shared Mission staff, go to our website, and we'll make sure you get connected.
Yeah, it's also helpful to know that through the pre-screening process, you're provided an initial technical score. So if there are any, things missing, for example, like the use of the training navigator, there's an opportunity there for the applicant to go back and, rectify that, right?
Yeah, the concept paper really provides an opportunity for them to get feedback and know how to proceed. And the navigator works with them through that process to answer their questions about the RFP, about their agency. And the big thing we're trying to do is connect their mission with our mission. We can't change our mission, but we can certainly help them connect to our mission.
Yeah, it's also helpful to know, since Councilman Knowles brought it up, Southside Hornets, they were awarded under the prior funding model, and if successful, they would be eligible for sustainment grant funding, right?
Correct. That's the next phase that we added just in the past year.
Okay. Gina?
And I needed to just let you know that I talked to one of my sources, that being Mark Carter, and his favorite programs, I asked him, what are your top 3? And he listed the after-school program, the late-night program, and of course, the Safe Haven Youth Program. So do you have any explanation for that magic sauce, why these 3 programs stand out for this guy who is known to be an advocate in the community?
Yeah, I mean, those programs, we've had them in the community for a long time. I think they continue to work with the city to refine their methods and to make sure that they're measuring things. CCPD requires us to measure what it is that we're doing. And so I think, them working with us and the process that we go through, that partnership really yields good results. In addition to honestly, we have some of the greatest programs, in Fort Worth, so that's a big part of it.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right.
Still
Keep
have
going. Yes.
development grants, so we'll continue on if we may. So these are our 2 development grants. We had 2 total last year. In '25, we already have 2, and so continuing to see growth there as well. For Maroon 9 and TFT organization, now our development grants are focused not on programming, but on strengthening organizations. And so the expenses are a little bit different in how that functions, and it's for our agencies that we want. They may not be ready for a program grant yet, but we want to get them there. So it's another way that we kind of wrap around to help them move to a stronger programming that move towards more funding. And so for Maroon 9, they provide year-round arts enrichment programs to underserved teens in districts 5, 6, and 8. This project will increase their overall impact and effectiveness through targeted capacity building initiatives, resulting in measurable improvements in participant engagement, program reach, and community influence. Funding will be used to compensate a consultant, website redesign, program supplies, and computer equipment. And then moving on to TFT organization, this $50,000 grant is for an agency that provides financial education to at-risk underserved communities in Fort Worth. Their project will develop and expand their ability to increase safety through direct neighborhood projects, youth crime prevention and intervention projects, by conducting weekly executive coaching sessions and implementing a strategic plan. Funding will be used to compensate a consultant, program supplies, computer equipment, and software. And as I've mentioned in the past, development grants does require our agencies to work with an outside consultant to bring more resources to the table and help provide that additional layer of support. So with our recommendations, and this answer a question that was brought up earlier, so we have the 1.1 million for program grants and $91,500 in development grants for a total recommendation of 1.19 million. So total funds available, and these are in a life-to-date fund, so they continue to be available until we're able to grant them. Total funds available are 4.7 million. After today, a remaining balance would be 3.5 million if approved. And with the pending grants and the increased cap, we have about 3.6 million in grants that are pending. So if all are awarded, then we will be, we won't have any additional resources available except for the 25 budget.
Quick question. If you don't have any other programs that apply for these dollars, do it stay in the community budget, or do y'all allocate it somewhere else?
No, it's excuse me.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it's in a life-to-date fund. So that allows us to do multi-year grants, but also as it stays committed for this purpose. So it's a Partners of Shared Mission fund. They stay there, and this is the report of what's remaining and what we're anticipating.
Any other questions from the board, please? All right, okay, so before us, we have this item here to consider, community-based program funding recommendations. Do I have a motion? Okay, second. All right, any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. All right, once again, Keith, consideration of FY25 recommended CCPD budget. Oh, okay, Chief, I guess you're giving that.
We're gonna tag team it.
Good afternoon, CCPD Board, Mr. President. Thank you. I wanted to start off today with something a little different, though. I wanted to start off with a thank you to all of you. I know this is the CCPD Board, but I'm speaking to the Mayor and Council now. Last week was a very tough week for the Forward Police Department. As you all know, we lost a brother, a friend, a hero, a family man. And it's hard to get through times like that, but it's been support that has gotten us through. We've seen it all the way from the national level, the state level, locally with our communities, with other agencies across the country that have stepped up to support us. But I wanted to thank this group, everyone around this table. once, just where it really struck the most to me was the candlelight vigil. There were so many people there. I saw so many faces, and I saw every single one of these. And when I saw your faces, I saw your eyes and the tears in many of them. I knew then that not only were you supporting us and Billy's family, you were literally standing with us in the heat at this somber occasion. But when I saw your faces, I knew you were also grieving with us. And as the chief of the Ford Police Department, I cannot tell you how much that meant to me, how much I appreciate that support from every single one of you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Now with business.
Thank you, Chief Noakes.
Excuse me, I've already messed up the slides. Keith, can you back that up?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, for the agenda today, we're going to be talking about our accomplishments and our performance, also our FY25 police budget. So for some of our accomplishments, we always talk about what we're doing with violent crime because violent crime is number one for us. We've got to keep our residents safe and make them feel safe. This key accomplishment for Q2 for the homicides being down over 26% is something I wanted to highlight, and it's because of the great work being done by officers out there in the field every single day, and our professional staff working behind the scenes like our crime analysts, like our crime lab, like our communication specialists, and everyone that's contributing. You see this +6 on gun violence clearance rates. When we started our gun violence unit, late 2020, early 2021, the clearance rate for non-fatal shootings was about 16%. With this 6% increase, we're now 79% clearance rate because of the incredible work being done by our gun violence unit. We have a 1.8% decrease in violent crime. It's not the number we want to see. We're going in the right direction, but we're working hard to increase that number. We're very proud of our Fort Worth ISD criminal justice program. We're working with students from Eastern Hills and South Hills. It's been one of the most engaging, incredible experiences, not only the students, but our officers have had as well. We've had some facility openings. We're proud of our priority one response times being down. And obviously, we're proud of meeting our FY23 general fund goals. So our performance indicators, I'm going to go with the red first because the red is not where we want to be. We're up on our priority 2. We're up on our priority 3. We want to see those numbers go the opposite direction. But I want to point out what we're doing with our priority 1 calls, how we've actually come down. There's some things we've changed to make that happen. It used to be that whenever a call came in for service to our dispatch center, it just went to whatever call taker might be available. We've taken about half of our call taker staff, and they only take emergency calls. Because of that, those calls are being answered faster. There's been a 10% increase in the number that are answered within 15 seconds of making the call. And because of that idea that came from our communication specialists, we're actually now seeing that decrease we need. We're also looking at, or have implemented a quality assurance program where we're working with all of our communications employees to make sure they're working to the standard that's expected and even going above and beyond. One thing, and this kind of goes back to what Councilmember Nettles said earlier, asking about communication with those who call us. So recently we've entered an agreement with Power DMS for a model that's called Power Engage. It's one-way texting. And what that one-way texting will be text messages directly to our residents who call us, who we might not have been able to reach yet, to let them know we are on our way or an officer has been dispatched. It's going to take us probably over the next 90 days to get that fully implemented. But the company, Power DMS, looking at the results they've seen in other agencies, it's been a significant reduction in residents actually calling back, which is taking more time from the call takers. That's been by as much as a 50% reduction, which for us will be about 50,000 fewer calls for our call takers each year, which would help them actually answer the new calls that are coming in. Yes, ma'am.
Is that a system that folks will have to opt into prior to calling 911, kind of like we have our emergency alert system? Or is it automatic if they call 911 from a cell phone, we know to just text them that update?
Automatic.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Moving on. Well, no, I'm sorry. Keith, please, one second. We do see an increase in crimes against society. A lot of those will be, say, for instance, crimes that our vice unit work on, prostitution, gambling. And some of those offenses actually come from the proactive work that those units are doing to take people off the street who might be involved in those kind of crimes. But we've seen our crimes against persons and our crimes against property rates actually decrease. Priority 1 calls, we'll go back to that. As you can see, we all know, I don't have to tell you, the population of Fort Worth is growing rapidly. The number of calls that we're receiving is growing rapidly. For instance, since 2013, the number of priority 1 calls has increased 40%. 40%. At the same time, our response times have increased, but only by about 18.7%, about half of it. And because of the new positions you've approved us in budgets, because of the new positions in communications, that's absolutely helped. What I want to point out here is the significant increase that we're seeing in population and in calls, but the fact that we're able still to bring down those priority 1 response times. Bless you. Okay, next. Going back to population. So since 2013, the crime rate for property crimes has decreased about 40%. That's pretty incredible. And that's while our population since 2013 has increased about 23%. Normally when you see population go up, you might see a different number, but we've actually been able to bring that down. And you might not be able to tell it by this slide, but crimes against property with the same increase in population has actually come down about 2%. Okay? Violent Crime Initiative has done amazing things, as I mentioned before. We've seen slight increases in robbery and aggravated assault, which we are addressing. But at the double-digit decreases we've seen in murder, non-fatal shootings, and deadly conduct has been an absolute joy to see. And there's so many officers out there day and night that are making sure we're increasing those numbers and continuing to bring them down. All right, so recommended budget. We're going to review these recommendations. I want to thank Keith, Lorraine, the entire team for all the work that they've done to get this together. And I also want to thank Christy Ann Simmons and the Fort Worth Lab for being partners in preparing this. It's been an absolute team effort. So here's our recommended budget. Overall, $461.8 million. And then we've broken that down into general and CCPD. What I want to note, when you look at CCPD, it looks like a smaller number than you might expect. Those are just the funds in CCPD that are going to police directly. That doesn't count all the other departments that are affected. So CCPD is about 27.4% of our overall budget, which leaves 72.4% for general fund. A lot of information on this slide. I'm just going to give you some highlights. One thing to remember, when we break these two down, general fund, you see primarily we're talking about personnel costs. When you're talking about CCPD, you're talking more about training, community collaboration programs, overtime support, capital training, and personnel who work in a lot of our specialized units who focus on the community. Okay? Now you can see a little better here as it breaks down the different items that are covered in general fund and in the CCPD, but I think this group really knows it pretty well. What I do want you to know is we take the priorities that you give us, we listen to the community and the feedback that they give, and we bring budgets based on those priorities that we hear from you in the community. So the process, obviously today we're here to talk about this. If there is no action today on the budget, we can meet again on the 27th and ultimately culminating in a vote on September 17th of this year. I'll say for the revenue summary, obviously we all know that it's going to be a little tighter budget year this year. That's okay. We're going to make this work. Because revenue for sales tax is expected to be about 1%, we had to significantly alter the way we were doing some things. We budgeted interest differently based on historical actuals to make sure we were budgeting that accurately. And you can see here the reflection of that with some of the numbers. And if you have any questions as we're going along, please jump out and ask me. Okay, for the CCPD expenditure summary. A little bit later, we'll talk about each program specifically. Right now, we're look at it by initiative and how the budget looks. Some highlights here, enhanced response. What we're talking about with our enhanced response portion of the budget, those are based on recommendations for more SROs, for bike teams, and for the new crossing guard contract. For neighborhood crime, we're talking about NPOs and actually moving a couple of positions that were in general fund to the CCPD. Recruiting and training, we're going to highlight that a little bit more in a later slide, so we'll move on.
Chief, before you leave that slide, I did have a question. Can you
Sure.
go back to it? Recruitment and training. Talk us through that decrease, please.
Absolutely. So when we looked, and that's a concerning one, which is why we're going to have a slide explaining a little bit better, but we'll discuss that now. One of the things we saw in our academy classes going through was a higher than normal attrition rate. We have done several things to address that, and we've seen an improvement. But based on the last few years, the attrition rate we've been seeing, we budgeted a 15% attrition rate. And because of that new factor that we're considering, we have a decrease in the overall spending for recruitment. Not that we're reducing the number of classes, not that we're reducing the number of people we're trying to put in the classes, we're just being realistic about the attrition rates we've been seeing in our classes.
Okay, so because attrition rate was never accounted for before, and this is a new consideration, that's why it reflects in that number as it does.
Correct, and now if I can make sure I'm explaining it clearly, we did factor in attrition rates,
Okay.
but we had seen significantly higher than normal attrition rates.
Okay.
So it caused us to recalculate that based on the last few years of attrition rates.
Understood.
Oh, Chief, can I ask a quick question on
Yes,
that
ma'am.
slide and the slide before? What is the difference between funding application and then recommended budget? Those two columns.
So there was an adjustment we worked on with the Fort Worth lab, a number that we hadn't got in for the meet and confer, a number that they wanted in there. So that was a last minute change that we had to get in there. It was intended to be in there, we had just missed it.
Okay, thank you.
So breaking things down into each of our categories, recruitment and training, equipment and technology and infrastructure have decreased some. Enhanced response and neighborhood crime prevention have increased. And one thing I want to point out in gray at the bottom, partners with a shared mission, you're going to see 9%. One thing I want to make sure all of you know is we are still sticking with our commitment that 10% of the tax revenue for CCPD goes to our partners with a shared mission. There is 9% there because what is also factored in is the overall budget, which also includes revenue, such as revenue from the SRO program, where 4th ISD covers half of our officers and 100% of our sergeants. So although that says 9 of the overall budget, we are still sticking with our commitment of giving 10% of the tax revenue in the CCPD. That has not changed. Couple things to point out here, school resource officers, what that's going to come down to for 4th ISD, 3 additional SROs or school resource officers for elementary schools and 1 new sergeant. And again, it is important to note they pay half of the cost for the officers and 100% for the sergeant. I want to talk a little bit about the ballistic glass. That is something we want to do for our officers to keep them as safe as possible. What that will be is ballistic glass in the driver's side window and door, like a panel in the door, also in the front passenger window and door, and that's going to go in the windshield as well. It's only for new marked patrol or vehicles that are out actually serving in our communities in marked units. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to ask you or Keith to please send me a specific job description of the school resource officer.
Okay. So make a note, please. Thank you. We will get that to you. And then the addition with the school crossing guards, obviously there was an increase from what, 1350 to 1607 for our crossing guards, which I know they appreciated. And that was an increase of about 1.4 million. There's going to be a significant increase in vehicle replacement. One thing we did, we had our fleet team look at our replacement schedule. We were really behind. We needed to catch up. We needed more vehicles in the fleet to actually be able to catch up. Our next, staffing units. That's a lot of information. Let's get to some of the high points. We talked about bike units. One, we'd spoken with Councilmember Beck about the need for making sure there is security in the Magnolia Entertainment District. We're gonna have 2 bike officers for the Magnolia Entertainment District. Also, we're gonna have 2 for the stockyards, something we've been talking with Councilmember President Flores for quite some time, something he's been very patient about. And one thing I want to notice right here, it says West Bikes Program. Mr. President, the only reason it says West is because we have 2 funds for bike officers in the CCPD. One is Central because they're already in downtown and now they will be in Magnolia. The other is for West 7th. So they're funded out of that fund, but they will be in your district in Northwest in the stockyards.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Community Alliance, this is the swap I was talking about. We had a lieutenant and a captain who were over units who were completely within the CCPD. It made no sense. So we're moving those positions from general fund into the CCPD. No change to the overall budget, it's just which bucket they're coming out of. And for our friends in North, we're gonna get 2 more MPOs. We're gonna make sure we staff up the MPOs. They've been working shorthanded. They've not had the number that they've needed. We've been trying to cover it the best we can. We're asking for 2 full-time MPO positions for North Division. The expanded training, very important, very near and dear to my heart. That's gonna be a full-time sergeant for our wellness unit. This is the one I want to make sure I cover really carefully, the 911 call taker program. We're talking about $1 million coming out of that. Here's why. I was very ambitious about doing everything we could to fully staff the communications division. There was a program we considered that I asked for, and it was approved to be able to have a bit of a surplus because it takes a long time to recruit, hire, and train new applicants and actually get them on the floor in the communications center. So the idea was even once we're fully staffed, maybe we have a few more in the pipeline ready to go as soon as an opening comes up. I was a bit too ambitious. We never got close to that mark. We don't anticipate getting to that mark by the end of this budget, upcoming budget. So those were funds that were sitting idle and we could not use. What we're requesting is that money is actually going to be diverted so we can use it for things we need and can use right now. If the program looks like it's a good idea once we are fully staffed down the road, we can come back to you and discuss it again at that time. But the number of authorized positions that we've always had, we're not reducing that. It was that program we had to try to have more of a pipeline of communications employees.
Before you move on from that slide, I see that there's a reduction in the new officer training program. Can you kind of walk through what type of training or why that reduction? Is it just we have less new officers or?
That's going back to the attrition rate that we
Okay.
talked about before.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. All right, next. Did we hit enhanced response, Keith?
I think we did.
Okay, very good.
Neighborhood.
Move on. Let's go to slide 18 is what I'm looking for.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. A couple I want to point out on this one. We already talked about the central bikes and all. One thing, almost all the positions we're talking about, when we're talking about either new positions or current, they're all going to be affected by meet and confer, however that turns out, and pay for performance. That's pretty much blanket, so I'll just leave that. So I don't have to mention on every single one. The community facility policing program, that was the library marshal, which is continuing. The reason there's a decrease, we had a one-time capital expense of a vehicle for that marshal last budget cycle that will not be in this budget, but the program is not stopping. We're not reducing funds. We just don't have to purchase another vehicle this year. Let's go ahead and move on. I think we've covered all the rest in the other slides, Keith.
Okay.
And I only want to point this one out right here because, again, when we're going to our community stakeholders, they make us aware of their priorities. These were perfectly aligned with our own needs assessment, having the school resource unit, Stockyards bike team, and the Magnolia team, perfectly in alignment with what the community's been asking and our council members. All right, next. Really the only one that we haven't already touched on somewhat is the patrol support program, and there was an adjustment there. And I don't want you to think we're providing less patrol to support. But we looked at our historicals, and for instance, last year, 5 of 7 of our patrol support centers had significant savings in 2023. So it's just a more realistic number based on the hours that were being used. It's an effort to be as responsible as we can with the funds we are entrusted with. All right, let's go to the next one, Keith, please, and I believe this one's yours.
Yes, sir. So as you may remember in our February meeting, we talk about changing some of the titles and consolidating to make it a little bit more concise to go towards a priority approach to our programs. And so this is that consolidated approach with our gang intervention priority program, after school priority program, victim services as well. We still have all the same agencies are funded. And the thing that I'll point out here is that we did a 4% increase for our programs this year, our mission partner programs this year. And you see the decrease that's in our after-school priority program. And part of what that is, we had offered for 2 years a 10% violent crime initiative increase to our agencies. A couple of them didn't see that it fit in their programming, which was fine. It was no problem. We decreased that out, but we still offered that 4% increase this year. And so the net of that is that slight decrease that you see in after-school programming. Our request for emerging partners programs, which is our community-based programs we talked about earlier, it's the same program, is $4.6 million. I'll talk on the next slide to see where we're at. As we talked about earlier, we have 9 applications pending. And then also our partners with a shared mission admin program. We have 3 staff members that work tirelessly to make sure that this initiative is well staffed. This is where we currently are with our partners with a shared mission, specifically our emerging partners, our community-based programs. We have $3.49 million remaining in active contracts. That's across 23 active contracts, and you can see them listed right there. Our prospective applications, in the past quarter, we trained 39 agencies and had 25 eligibility surveys come through. So we're seeing an uptick in agencies that are interested in our funding. And then with our remaining funds, we talked earlier about after the recommendations, there's about $3.54 million remaining. We have $3.6 million in pending applications between 4 concept papers and 5 full applications that are pending. Moving forward to recruitment and training initiative. Chief, do you have anything else here?
The only thing I wanted to point out here was the new officer training. We're going to be having 4 new classes, and we already have 1 class that started now that will be included in this. And again, remind you of that 15% attrition rate that we factored in. Now, if as we go along, that changes, we would definitely come back to the board and let you know if there's more capacity there. But that's where we are right now. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Chief, if you would, please send me some information on efforts to recruit African Americans to SWAT. You know, a lot of your dangerous crimes go, I guess, not as impacted as they possibly could be because you need someone of color going in. And I don't want you worrying about it now, but send me some information on how you guys are looking in that area.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so this is what we're looking at for our classes. For our next classes, new classes, not the one we have going now, we're looking for about 70 in the full classes, 159 and 160, and between 10 and 20 for our lateral, which are lateral entry officer programs, the LEOs, 10 and 20. And if we can exceed those numbers, we're going to do our best to actually either meet or beat those. So here is how we're looking as far as sworn vacancies, and I want you to look at the very end of 21. And our goal for quite some time now has been to be completely staffed at the end of 2026. We have 21 showing there. That's what the numbers are showing right now. We plan on catching up with the classes we have coming up, but I want to tell you why we have that 21. We have always made a commitment to never sacrifice quality just for quantity, just to get more officers out there. I know that's what you have demanded of us as well. Our most recent class, class 158, we had 1,100 people apply. That's standard. It's usually around 1,000 people. We got 1 class of 52 people from 1,100 applicants. 1 class. And 52 was not even close to what we wanted. Obviously, that's not what we wanted to see. That was a disappointment, but I hope you will see our commitment that we have made. We'd rather hire no one than the wrong one, and we're only going to put the best that we can find in our classes, even if that means we have 1,050 people that we have to turn away from our academy classes. What I'm very excited about is all the work that our full-time recruiting team has been doing. I'm excited to see what our numbers will be in January. I know Executive Assistant Chief Aldridge applauded them for having 1,000 people apply. He said, next time, why not 2,000? So we're doing everything we can to increase those numbers. Equipment, technology, and infrastructure. There's a decrease in your citywide camera. That's only because of a one-time expense we had in the last budget for Will Rogers. It's not going to be a recurring expense. Facility requirement program. You're going to see that blank. There's a lot going on with that when we're talking about a new central division facility. We're talking about overages and costs for our Northwest Division, the potential for what's turning out to be a very expensive facilities program. So we're planning on coming back in November with some more information on that because there's just so much going on to put all that information together. The high mileage vehicle program obviously includes the cost of the vehicles, maintenance, and fuel, and it also reflects that comprehensive review our fleet team did, letting us know we needed to increase the number of vehicles we have to keep up with our replacement. And we will have another slide explaining that more shortly. Matter of fact, I believe it's next, Keith.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and I was part of that review and working with the fleet division, worked really hard they're working to increase the data that they have on hand and how they categorize the fleet. And so based on the vehicle specifications that we have, these are all of the vehicles that are eligible for replacement. We're not going to try to do all of those in the next fiscal year. We average those out over 5 years, which is a good practice to do. But we also worked with Fort Worth Lab on our total loss vehicles. We found out that we were getting behind on some of the totaled vehicles that were taking away from our fleet. And so we worked with Fort Worth Lab to come up with the right number to budget to replace those vehicles so it didn't continue putting us further behind at 29 vehicles a year. It cuts into our replacement. And so that's where you see that 15.1 million number for fleet replacement this year is higher than it was last year, but that's based on a comprehensive review across our vehicles.
If I can, one thing wasn't really on the agenda, but I'm going to bring this up too. It's something we've been having conversations with many. A lot of the accidents are not our fault. Some of them are. So we're working at increasing and in wherever we can improving our training of our officers to hopefully bring down the number of not just wrecked but total vehicles, which not only will bring that price down, but will keep our officers and our residents safer as well.
Moving forward, this is our capital improvement plan that includes the aforementioned vehicles. That 17.4 million is the portion that is for capital vehicles. We have our crime lab equipment that is there as well. Obviously, our technology is a big part of the way that we operate. Keeping our technology running so that we can do intelligence-led policing is a big part of the way that we operate. And so our capital improvement plan this year is 21.5 million. So with that, I'll move to this slide, and this is kind of the balance of where we're at, and it's projected, but I'll kind of walk through it. The end of this current fiscal year, we're projecting to have a 49.2 million in fund balance remaining. With the 25 recommended budget, that'll come to 45.6 million you see there in the third blue line. We have a reserve requirement that totals to about 18.9 million. So that leaves an excess fund balance of about 26.7 million. Now, we usually try to share and make sure that the repayment of sales tax that we have, that we pay over 10 years is roughly about 6.2 million. So if you were to deduct that out, it leaves us about 20.4 million. But we pay that out over 10 years, so we want to make sure that you're kind of aware of where that's at. Now, we didn't expect to have this number when we came to this meeting, but just in the past couple of months, as Chief was talking about, there's some changes to the way Central Patrol and Old City Hall worked, and so we had a plan for that to go towards that project, but there were some changes, and so with those changes on the ground, we're planning to come in November with some potential projects as we work with PMD and Fort Worth Lab on those issues that the Chief had mentioned. Any questions?
All right, questions from the board on any of that material covered? There's a lot to digest there. Going once, going twice. All right, seeing none. Okay. Well, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Keith, for that presentation. Going to close the public hearing and now ask for a motion.
Move for approval.
Okay. All right, any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any nays? Seeing none, the recommended CCPD budget passes. All right, do we have any members of the public here, Jairus, to address this?
There are no members.
All right, okay. Request for future agenda items. I took notes on few. I think, Jeanette, you had something, a question about an update on the gun detection technology. Is that correct? Okay, all right. And then Gina, SRO information as far as duties, responsibilities, and African-American recruitment efforts for SWAT. All right. I have want an update on Safe Night LLC and their efforts looking at our entertainment districts. Does anyone else have future agenda items that I have not covered?
I can add some clarity
Okay.
to the SRO request. We've had numerous fights at East Side schools, and I think the public and I need to have clarity on what is the role of the SRO, because some through the years have felt that they don't step outside the school building, and I just need to look at that description to make sure we all know.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jared?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if CCPD has ever done this, but curious about it. Have we ever hired a consultant or did it internally or had staff do a study internally on like strategic planning, especially with related to our partners with a shared mission and how those investments are helping to achieve some of our,
I don't recall.
safety goals?
Keith, could you come up there and perhaps address Councilmember Williams' question?
Yes, sir. We've been working on some things, trying to get it rolling. We talked before, a study with TCU, a survey that was going to go out. We've been working with the lab a little closer on that to make sure before it goes out that it's what it needs to be. It's not a strategic plan per se. It's really just to assess impact. And so if you impact a little bit, maybe that's something we can look into. Maybe we can talk about it.
That'd be good. Just as context, I think that'd be good for us to discuss at a future meeting, but just context, I know that the city of Arlington, with their Tomorrow Foundation Fund, they recently did a number of assessments to help better understand the return on investment for the limited dollars that they were investing into the community. So maybe something good for us to discuss and maybe support staff if that's something they find useful.
Okay. Staff, is that clear sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
As far as how to address council members' question? Okay. All right. Anyone else? Charlie, you got both hands in the air? Okay. All right. Well, not seeing any, then we are adjourned.